Witam Państwa bardzo
Very
serdecznie.
warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Well, let us start by a minute of silence, because we are in Upper Silesia and the tragedy in coal mines, Pniówek and Zofiówka, but also the situation behind the border where people are dying. So today, with a minute of silence, let us honor the memory of those who died.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you kindly.
Chciałam bardzo serdecznie powitać na naszym dzisiejszym spotkaniu jubileuszowym piąty Śląski Ład, tym razem dla Ukrainy. I bardzo się cieszę, że jest z nami pan premier Mateusz Morawiecki. Witamy również panią minister rodziny i polityki społecznej, panią Marlenę Maląg. Dziękujemy za przybycie. I pana Grzegorza Piechowiaka, sekretarza stanu w Ministerstwie Rozwoju i Technologii. Witam pana wojewodę Jana Chrząszcza. Witam panią prezes Banku Gospodarstwa Krajowego, panią Daszyńską-Muzyczkę. Witam parlamentarzystów. Jesteśmy tutaj w takim gronie, że nie będę kolejno już Państwa witać. Wybaczcie, pan premier też
welcoming, greeting everybody separately. Mr. Prime Minister doesn't have so much time as to wait for us all to greet one another. We are all on equal rights here. Welcome presidents of companies and the councillors of the cities, and also I would like to thank the media for their participation. EKR as organizer of European Conservatives and Reformers, organizers, always Professor Ryszard Legutko, co-chairman of the group, is with us, and now his message. Honorable ladies and gentlemen, former time we met at the Silesian Deal Conference by the end of November last year. 5 months have passed and history has actually accelerated incredibly. Our today's conference thus has a completely different weight compared to the earlier editions. The invasion of Russia on Ukraine changed vectors of European policy, global policy. Priority has become security, and most literally speaking, military and existential security. We have to very clearly state that at our borders we have a gangster state, a barbarian state, which does not adhere to any rules. In ruins we can see German strategies maintained for dozens of years of cooperation with Russia, Wandel durch Handel or Wandel durch Aneruch. So change through trade or change through coming closer. Roughly speaking, it was about to civilize inhabitants of the Kremlin by doing business with them. The Germans were pretending that they did not see that Putin was actually running a war all through that time, almost breaking human rights, and now after the invasion on Ukraine, pretending any longer is not possible. Closing eyes is not the choice, which doesn't mean that everybody in the EU have their eyes sufficiently wide open. We are thus at the key moment of history of our continent. We have to understand this if we want to survive, and if, as so far, the EU will keep creating further internal divisions, it will become weaker, and its weakness will be feeding the military and criminal war machine of Putin. Thus, we are facing a great threat, but also facing an opportunity. Now it is time to change the rules of EU operation and time to exit the model where strongest states are dominating and to create a model of real continental solidarity. This is the key to victory, and this is the foundation for stabilization of situation in Europe for the coming dozens of years. I wish you fruitful proceedings. Thank you, Professor, for this message and for opening up the conference. And now, please allow me to the reading of the letter of initiator of the fifth edition, Mr. Jarosław Kaczyński, President of the Council of Ministers, and Ms. Malik is kindly requested to read it. Honorable ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Prime Minister, Madam MP, Messieurs Ministers, Messieurs MPs, and all remaining honorary guests. I have the great pleasure to read this letter addressed at organizers of today's conference. Honorable Ms. Isabella Klotz, the EU MP, Honorable Professor Ryszard Legutko, EU MP, co-chairman of EKR Group. I am extremely honored. I can't address you with these few words on this exceptional opportunity, being the fifth edition of program conference, Silesian Deal, under the auspices of European Conservatives and Reformers Group. I was requested by Messieurs organizers to give an input on the influence of Russian aggression on Ukraine, on security policy in domestic, European and global aspects, as well as what would have to be done for our motherland to cope with the new challenges and successfully counteract the occurring threats. Relatively structured and systematic presentation of both these issues should actually take a very thick treaty. So please allow me to stay on a few general comments. Full-scale war actually inflicted by Russia on the 24th of February this year on Ukraine is symbolically closing the time of end of history and opening up new stage, the core of which is open conflict generated by aiming at changing the hitherto order in European as well as global scale. It's now difficult to foresee precisely the course of war in Ukraine further on, and all the more what forms will Chinese-American rivalry take and how they will be spread over the time axis. It is impossible to actually decide to what extent long-term EU policy will change and the policy of its main actors. In this situation of uncertainty, having many variables independent from us, we should be looking for what is permanent, unchangeable and dependent on us. First of all, one should try to base on own opinions, so reject tempting way of thinking that somebody will take care of us in something and will act on our behalf. So we, as much as possible, have to be forging our common world together. It's us who have to define our national interest and take care of it. Alliances are important, very important, but how? Very strongly it was displayed by war in Ukraine. Only strong and determined entity
jego interesy będą uwzględniane.
able to defend themselves can
Trzeba
count upon
także, rzecz
their
jasna,
interests
w
to be
określonych
taken into
granicach
account. Of course, one has
mierzyć
to,
siły na zamiary,
within
a nie zamiar podłóż.
defined limits, has to
Innym słowy,
measure
imposybilizm
strength
zastępować aktywizmem,
per
stawiać
plans.
ambitne cele i konsekwentnie przełamywać
Impossibilism
opór
has to
materii.
be replaced
Po
by
trzecie,
consequence.
musimy
And
też dbać o morale naszego
thirdly, we have to
społeczeństwa.
take care of the
Odbudować
morale of our
nadszarpnięte
society,
przez
reconstruct
propagowany przez
destructed
lewicowo-liberalny
by
mainstream
leftist,
indywidualizm,
liberalist, mainstream
myślenie w
liberal
kategoriach
individualism,
wspólnotowych, w tym
thinking in
państwowych,
community categories,
rozbudzać poczucie
including
przynależności do
the
własnego narodu
state-based
oraz
ones, and
umacniać
develop
przywiązanie do
the feeling
ojczyzny,
of belonging to
a
own
także
nation
przeciwstawiać
and
pedagogice
belonging to
wstydu,
motherland, as well
pedagogikę
as
dumy z
counteract
polskich osiągnięć i z tego, co dobre w
the
rodzinnej
shame
historii.
with
Dziś na przykładzie
pride and what is good in our
oporu
history.
Ukrainy widzimy,
Today,
jakie
on the
ogromne
example
znaczenie
of
dla
heroic
sprawy wolności
resistance
mają
of
uczucia
Ukraine, we can see
patriotyczne
how
oraz
important
gotowość do
for
poświęceń
independence
dla własnego kraju.
is the
Te trzy
feeling
elementy
of
są podstawą
patriotism and
wszystkiego.
readiness to
Naszej wolności
devote
i
oneself to the country.
podmiotowości,
These
naszego
are
bezpieczeństwa,
basis for
naszej
three
pomyślności
items: our
ekonomicznej. Ale jest
independence, our
jeszcze
economic
warunek czwarty
well-being, but there is
osiągnięcia
also
powodzenia.
the fourth precondition to
Mianowicie
reach
praca
success,
i jeszcze
namely
raz
work,
praca dla
work,
Polski.
and once again work for Poland.
Szanowni Państwo,
Honorable ladies and gentlemen,
pragnę życzyć Państwu
I
udanych
want to
obrad.
wish you successful
Niech
proceedings.
zrodzą one piękne
May
owoce w
they
postaci
give
pomysłów
beautiful
i
fruit in the
rozwiązań,
form of
które
ideas
będą
and
służyły
solutions,
sprawie
which
jak
will be
najpełniejszego
serving the
udziału
matter of
województwa śląskiego
possibly most full
gospodarce,
participations of
gospodarczej
the Silesian
odbudowie
region in
Ukrainy.
economic reconstruction of
Pani
Ukraine.
poseł Izabeli Kloc
To
oraz
Madam
panu profesorowi
MP Isabella Klotz
Ryszardowi
and to
Legutce
Professor Ryszard
chciałbym
Legutko,
gorąco
I would
podziękować za
like to
zaproszenie
thank
oraz
very
zaszczytną
kindly for
propozycję,
the
dzięki
invitation
której
and
mogłem skierować do państwa
honorable
tych kilka
proposal,
uwag.
which gave me an opportunity
Proszę
to
przyjąć
address you
moje
with these few comments.
najserdeczniejsze
Please
pozdrowienia.
accept my
Łączę wyrazy
kindest
szacunku.
greetings
Jarosław
with
Kaczyński.
respect, Jarosław Kaczyński.
Szanowni Państwo, chciałabym teraz
Honorable ladies and
poprosić
gentlemen,
naszych
I would
gości
like to ask
do
now
pierwszego
our
panelu.
guests to join
Bardzo
the
proszę
first
pana
panel.
premiera Mateusza
Mr. Prime
Morawieckiego.
Minister Mateusz Morawiecki is very kindly requested
Proszę.
to
Panią
take the seat.
minister
And
Marlenę
Madam
Maląg.
Minister Marlena
Bardzo proszę.
Maląg. Welcome, madam.
I pana Grzegorza
Mr.
Piechowiaka,
Grzegorz
sekretarza stanu w
Piechowiak,
Ministerstwie
Secretary of
Rozwoju i
State
Technologii.
at the Ministry of Development and Technology.
I
And
szanowni Państwo,
honorable ladies and gentlemen,
jesteśmy w
we
bardzo
are
trudnym momencie
in a very
historii.
difficult moment of
Jesteśmy
history.
w momencie,
We
gdzie
are
rzeczywiście
at a moment
decyduje się
when
przyszłość
really
nie tylko
the
Ukrainy, ale
future is
Europy
being
i
decided
świata.
not only of Ukraine, but
Dzisiaj
also of
z
Europe
jednej
and the
strony
world today.
słyszymy
On the one hand,
wybuchy
we hear
bomb, min.
explosions of
Ukraina jest
bombs and
zaminowana,
mines.
tak by można
Ukraine
powiedzieć.
is
Ale jednocześnie
mined,
wierzymy,
actually I would dare
że
say, but at the same time
Ukraina
we believe
zwycięży
that Ukraine
i
will
zwycięży
prevail, will
wolny
win,
świat,
and
świat
that the free
demokratyczny.
world,
Dzisiaj
democratic
myślę,
world
trzeba
will win.
postawić pytanie,
Today I
w jaki
think
sposób
a
my
question has to be
możemy
asked in
pomóc
what way
Ukrainie.
we can help
Owszem,
Ukraine.
broń
Yes,
i jeszcze raz broń
weapons,
dzisiaj.
weapons and weapons once again today.
Natomiast
However,
oprócz tego
apart
jeszcze
from this,
jest ta kwestia
there is
właśnie
also
gospodarki.
the question
Bo
of economy,
dzisiaj
because
gospodarka
today
Ukrainy jest
economy of
rzeczywiście
Ukraine
w
is
sytuacji
really
tragicznej. Jak
in
możemy
a
pomóc?
tragic
Jak
situation.
Polska może
How can we
pomóc?
help? How
Śląsk?
can Poland
Jak
help?
świat
How can
może się
Silesia,
zaangażować? Czy to będzie
how the
rzeczywiście
world can
taka
get
jedna
involved? Will
wielka
it really
solidarność
be
światowa?
one great
Panie
global
premierze.
solidarity? Mr. Prime Minister.
Szanowna Pani
Honorable
Przewodnicząca,
Madam
Państwo Ministrowie,
Mrs. Ministers
parlamentarzyści,
and
drodzy Państwo.
MPs, EU MPs,
Oczywiście
dear ladies and
dzisiaj
gentlemen, of
wszyscy
course,
koncentrujemy
today
się
we
na
all focus
współczuciu,
on
na pomocy Ukrainie, na dostawach broni, dostawach pomocy
feeling
humanitarnej.
for Ukraine
Ale
and
to bardzo
supplies
ważne,
of
żeby już teraz
humanitarian
skonstruować
of weapons.
programy na
And now
przyszłość.
it is very important to
I
construct
region
programs
o
for
tak
the
wielkich
future and the
tradycjach
region of such great
inżynierskich,
traditions.
budowlanych,
Of engineering,
projektowych,
construction and
menedżerskich,
design,
przemysłowych,
managerial,
przede
industrial
wszystkim
character.
przemysłowych,
First of all, industrial,
jakim jest region śląski.
which is the
To
Silesian
region, który,
region. This
jestem przekonany o tym, odegra
I'm convinced,
ogromną,
will
a może nawet
play
podstawową rolę
vast
wśród
and maybe
polskich
basic
regionów
role among Polish
w pracach
regions
przy odbudowie
in
Ukrainy.
work on reconstruction
To
of
ważne, aby
Ukraine.
patrzeć
This
na
is
to także
important
przez
to
pryzmat
view it also from the perspective
korzyści dla
of
polskiej gospodarki,
benefits
dla
for
polskiego
Polish
społeczeństwa.
economy, Polish society.
Bo niektórzy
Because
komentatorzy
some
usiłują
commentators
przedstawić tę
try
tragedię, z
to
którą mamy do
present this
czynienia, w
tragedy
sposób
we are
jednostronny.
facing,
Pokazują ją
unilaterally. They
jako
are
koszt po
showing it
stronie
as
budżetu
cost
państwa
at the
polskiego
side
i
of
dopytują,
Polish
kiedy
state
wreszcie
budget, and
przyjdą
they keep
środki z Unii
asking
Europejskiej.
when
Ja mogę
finally
tutaj
the
powiedzieć,
funds
że
from
te
the
środki
EU will
przyjdą.
come. I may
Te
assure you that these
żarna
funds will
biurokracji
come.
brukselskiej mielą powoli,
Then
ale one
the
przyjdą.
mills of
Ale już
European
dziś
bureaucracy
mogę
are
powiedzieć, że jak
grinding
patrzę
slowly,
na
but already
liczbę
today I
osób,
can say
która
that when I
legalnie
look at the
pracuje
number
w
of people
polskim
who are
systemie,
legally
wypełniając
employed
te
in the
miejsca
Polish
pracy,
system,
których Polacy nie
filling
chcą się
up
podejmować bardzo
those
często,
jobs which Poles
to
very often
z
don't
całą
want
pewnością
to
mogę
take
podkreślić, że
up.
ta
So
pomoc
quite
jest
certainly I may
obustronna,
assure you
jest
that this is
obopólna.
a mutual help,
I dlatego,
mutual support.
tak jak na poziomie
And
ludzkim,
just
my
like at
pomagamy
human
im,
level,
uchodźcom
we are
dzisiaj,
helping
pomagamy
them,
Ukrainie
the
poprzez pomoc humanitarną i inne formuły
Ukrainians
pomocy,
through
a oni
humanitarian
tam na
aid and
Ukrainie
other
walczą
forms of
o
help, and
nasze
in Ukraine
bezpieczeństwo
they are
również,
fighting
także o
also
naszą
for
wolność,
our
a
security,
z
for
kolei
our
ci,
freedom
którzy
also,
przyjechali już do
and
kraju,
those who
pracują na
came
rzecz
to
gospodarki polskiej.
our country are working
Nie dajmy się,
to the
szanowni
benefit of
państwo,
Polish economy.
wcisnąć
Do not
do
let
kąta,
us
w którym
be
tłumaczymy
pushed
się
into the corner
w sposób
where
zupełnie
we would be
niewłaściwy z tego,
actually
co dzieje się przed naszymi oczami.
being sorry
A
for
więc
what is happening in
jest
front of
to
our eyes,
sytuacja, w której na
explaining
skutek
this. This is a
tragicznej,
situation
zbrodniczej działalności
in which,
Rosji, my
as
z
a
jednej
result
strony
of
pomagamy,
tragic criminal
ale z drugiej
activities by
strony
Russia, on the one hand
tworzy
we are
ona
helping,
pewną
but on the other
przestrzeń
hand,
nadziei i
that is
rozwoju
creating
także dla
certain
Polski już
space
potem, kiedy
for Poland,
co daj Panie Boże, jak
which
najszybciej nastąpi, wojska
God
rosyjskie
permit
wyjdą z
the
Ukrainy,
Russian
zostaną
army
pogonione
will
z
leave
Ukrainy
Ukraine, will be chased
Ukraina
out from
utrzyma
Ukraine,
swoją
and Ukraine will maintain
Na co się
its
to będzie
sovereignty.
przekładało?
What will
Jestem
it be
przekonany, że będzie się
translated
to
into?
przekładało
I'm
na
convinced that
szereg
it
projektów,
will
bardzo
be
konkretnych projektów
actually
przemysłowych,
transformed
odbudowy
into a number
przemysłu
of
ukraińskiego,
projects,
w
industrial
którym
projects
polskie
to
firmy będą
rebuild,
odgrywały
reconstruct
niepośrednią rolę.
Ukrainian industry, where
polskie firmy
Polish
będą
companies will be
nie
playing
pomagały, tylko
a significant
partycypowały,
role,
brały w tym udział
not helping but
na zasadzie
participating in
również
it,
korzyści,
also
które same będą odnosiły.
based on
Warto,
benefits
żeby na to
also
patrzeć
for
od tej
themselves.
strony,
It
bo
is
inaczej cała
worthwhile
dyskusja
viewing
o
it
tym,
from
co dzieje się
this
wokół nas,
perspective,
będzie
because
niepewna.
otherwise the whole
Polska
discussion around
organizuje
us will
dzisiaj
not be complete.
pomoc dla
Poland
Ukrainy na
is
całym
today
świecie.
organizing assistance,
Reżyserujemy
help for
sankcje do
Ukraine
pewnego
globally.
stopnia,
We
ale
are
jednocześnie jestem
directing the
przekonany,
sanctions to some
że ta nasza
extent, but
działalność
at the same
będzie
time, I'm
przekładała
convinced
się nie
that
tylko na
these activities
soft
of ours
power,
will
na
not
to,
only
że
be
dzisiaj tak
translated
wyraźnie
into
widzimy
soft power, so-called,
znakomite
what we
podniesienie
perfectly see
reputacji
today,
Polski na całym
incredible boost
ale
of Polish
także na
reputation globally,
bezpośrednie,
but
twarde,
also
materialne korzyści
into
dla tych wszystkich, którzy
direct,
zaangażują się
hard global
pomoc
benefits for
na
all
Ukrainie
those who
już
get
po
involved in
zakończeniu
helping
wojny.
Ukraine already after
Obecny czas
ending the war.
redefiniuje wszystkie
This
dotychczasowe
time is redefining all
Jedne
paradigms
całkowicie,
so far.
inne
Some of them
przynajmniej częściowo.
totally, at
Do
least
takich
some of them
należy
at
również
least partly.
polityka
And among
klimatyczna
these
Unii
are
Europejskiej
also
i polityka energetyczna
European
Unii Europejskiej.
climate policy
Coś, co
and
jeszcze
European
niedawno wydawało
energy
się
policy.
niemożliwe,
Something
dziś
what
staje się
seemed
rzeczywistością.
impossible
Od
until
wielu
recently.
miesięcy
Today it's becoming reality. For many a month,
europarlamentarzyści z Prawa i
EU MPs
Sprawiedliwości podkreślali
from
konieczność
Law and Justice Party were
zredefiniowania
highlighting the necessity
polityki
to redefine
ETS,
a policy
czyli tak
around
zwanej
ETS,
polityki klimatycznej
called
wiążącej
climate
się z
policy,
uprawnieniami do
related
emisji
to
CO2.
the rights
Jeszcze w
for
grudniu
CO2 emissions.
słyszeliśmy, że to
Still in
prawie
December, we
niemożliwe,
heard
żeby
that it was
lepiej
also
o tym nie mówić.
almost impossible to
Podnosiłem to
avoid
bardzo wyraźnie na
talking
wszystkich
about it.
radach
I
europejskich.
highlighted it
I dziś
quite
widzimy,
clearly at all European
że
councils, and
Parlament
today we can
Europejski
see that
przychylił się
European
do
Parliament
wniosku rządu Prawa i
actually
Sprawiedliwości,
has bent
że
towards, has accepted
Parlament
the conclusion
Europejski chce
by
wykluczyć instytucje
Law and
finansowe
Justice that they want to
z
exclude
możliwości
financial institutions
brania udziału
from the possibility to
w transakcjach
participate
na rynku
in
ETS.
ETS
Po
transactions.
co są instrumenty
What
finansowe, po co
are
są
the
instytucje
financial
finansowe
instruments,
na rynku
financial
ETS?
institutions
Pytaliśmy
in
przez wiele
ETS
miesięcy,
market?
przez
We
wiele
kept
kwartałów.
asking for many months, for many
Gdzieś na
quarters.
obrzeżach Brukseli
Some
odbywała
were
się ta dyskusja.
at the
Dzisiaj nasz głos przebił się do mainstreamu Parlamentu Europejskiego.
At outskirts
Dziś
of
wiemy,
Brussels, this
że jest
discussion was
duża
going on
szansa
today.
na
We
rewizję
know that
systemu
there is a
ETS,
great
a w związku
opportunity
z tym na dużo lepszą
for revision of
przewidywalność
ETS
ścieżki
system and thus for
cenowej
better
ETS,
foreseeability
a
of
przewidywalność jest kluczowa dla
price
procesów
path of
inwestycyjnych,
ETS, and
a
it
także
is of
na
key
niższe
importance for
ceny
investment
ETS,
processes and
ceteris
also
paribus, czyli
to
niż byłyby
lower
one,
prices
gdyby
of
nadal
ETS
różnego rodzaju
compared to
spekulanci
if
i instytucje finansowe mogły brać
various
udział w
speculators and
transakcjach
financial
na tym
institutions
rynku. A więc
would be
nasz postulat został wreszcie
participating in
wysłuchany. Proszę
so
zobaczyć to, co jeszcze
suggestion
3
has
miesiące
been,
temu wydawało się kompletnie
listened
niemożliwe.
to what, please
Staje
note,
się
what
dzisiaj
seemed impossible
coraz
3 months
bardziej
ago is
oczywistą
now
prawdą,
becoming more and more
za
obvious
którą
a
my
truth
przemawialiśmy od dłuższego
for
czasu.
which we have been
I dlatego,
actually
szanowni państwo, w tych wielu obszarach,
pushing
polityka
towards for a
energetyczna,
longer time.
polityka klimatyczna,
And in
ale
these
także
many
inwestycyjna,
areas,
gospodarcza,
investment,
biznesowa,
business,
fiskalna,
fiscal,
budżetowa,
budgetary
we wszystkich
policy,
tych
in
obszarach
all these areas,
przedstawiamy nasz
we
program
are
działań
presenting our program
związany
of operations of
z
activity
tym, co
related
oby jak najszybciej
to what
nadeszło, czyli
may
odbudową
come soon as
suwerennej
possible.
Ukrainy.
That means
Odbudową,
reconstruction
której
of sovereign
Polska
Ukraine.
będzie nie tylko
Reconstruction,
kluczową
rebuilding, where
częścią,
Poland will be
ale
not
także
only playing the key
będziemy,
role, but
nasze
also
firmy, nasi przedsiębiorcy i
we,
nasi
our
pracownicy
companies, our entrepreneurs and our employees will
odnosili swego
be
rodzaju benefity
gaining
związane z tym, że to nasze
some
kompetencje,
kind of
nasze
benefit
zrozumienie
related to the fact
procesu
that it was
transformacji
our
na
competences,
Ukrainie,
our
nasza
understanding
bliskość do
of
tego systemu.
transformation processes
W
in
końcu
Ukraine,
Ukraina
our closeness to
wyglądała
this
tuż przed
system,
wojną całkiem
because
podobnie do tego,
Ukraine,
jak
just
Polska
before the
wyglądała w
war,
latach
looked
90.
very similar
Wysoki
to
poziom
how
korupcji,
Poland looked in
oligarchizacja,
1970s, high corruption level,
bardzo niejasne
oligarchy,
procedury.
and very
tym wszystkim
unclear
Ukraina też
procedures.
będzie musiała sobie dać
Ukraine
radę.
will also have
I już
to
dzisiaj
manage to
proszą
cope
nas
with
o
all that, and already
pomoc
today
w
they are
ułożeniu na
requesting
nowo
our
procedur
help
państwowych,
to
procesów państwowych,
set up a
instytucji
new
państwowych.
state
Najlepszym
processes, state
dowodem na to,
institutions,
że już
and the
dziś
best
rząd
proof
Ukrainy
of
patrzy na Polskę
this
jako na
is
kluczowego
that
partnera
today
w
already
procesie odbudowy.
Ukrainian government is
podpisana
viewing
przeze mnie w
Poland as a
sobotę w
key
Krakowie
partner,
z
and
premierem Ukrainy umowa.
the agreement
Ta
I signed
umowa
with Prime
otwiera
Minister of Ukraine
perspektywy handlu
in
dla bardzo wielu
Krakow.
polskich
It opens up
Ta umowa
prospects
czyni
for
z Polski
trade
główne
for
okno
many
na świat
Polish
dla całego
entrepreneurs. It
handlu
opens
ukraińskiego.
up main window
Bo
to the world for
dzisiaj wiemy,
all
że wybrzeże Morza
Ukrainian
Czarnego
trade,
jest
because
częściowo
today we know
zdobyte
that
przez rosyjskich
the
zbrodniarzy,
Black
a
Sea
częściowo
seaside
zachowane.
is actually
W związku z tym Polska dzisiaj
conquered
pomaga
by
Ukrainie w eksporcie,
Russian criminals,
jednocześnie
and
stając się
Poland is
pośrednikiem.
thus
Na
helping
pośrednictwie
Ukraine
też
becoming
można bardzo
an
dużo
intermediary. Being an
A tym
intermediary
samym coraz więcej
can
przedsiębiorców ukraińskich
help you
blokuje
gain a
się
lot,
w
and
Polsce,
thus
tworząc tutaj
many
miejsca
Ukrainian entrepreneurs are
A więc,
actually
szanowni państwo,
getting established in
kolejny
Poland,
przykład na to, że
creating
mamy
jobs
do
here.
czynienia
So yet another
z
example
polityką
showing that we
także
are
różnego rodzaju
dealing
korzyści
with
po stronie
policy of all kinds of
Ale nie chciałbym,
benefits at
żeby
Polish
dzisiaj
side
w
too, but I
tragicznych
would not
okolicznościach
like
ten język
today
korzyści
in these
był
tragic circumstances
Dziś
to
przede wszystkim
have this
koncentrujemy się na
language
tym,
of
w jaki
benefits
sposób możemy pomóc
being
walczącej Ukrainie w
prevailing
utrzymaniu jej suwerenności.
today. We have to
Bo
focus on
pamiętajmy
how
o
we
tym,
can help
że oni
the
tam na
fighting
swoich
Ukraine
szańcach, na swoich
in
barykadach,
regaining their freedom,
na swoich
because let us
fortyfikacjach,
remember that
a
on
widziałem
their
takie w
stronghold,
Kijowie,
on their fortifications,
walczą
and I
także o
saw
naszą
such
wolność,
ones in Kiev,
o nasze
they are
bezpieczeństwo
fighting also
i
for
walczą o pokój
our
wolny.
freedom, our
To
security,
dlatego także
and
jutro udaje
they
się
are
na
fighting for peace peace in Europe. That's why tomorrow I'm also going to Germany, and there I will also be talking about redefining many policies in order for us together to be able to quickly rebuild Ukraine. And I'm convinced that Silesian Deal for Ukraine, all the Silesian region will be playing here a vast role, because we have excellent, experienced people, managers, engineers, project managers, industrial specialists, and these are people whose imagination will be very much needed in work for Ukraine. Honorable ladies and gentlemen, may this time when we will be already talking about rebuilding Ukraine together for European money and American money and from other parts of the world, may this time come soonest possible. I am convinced that this time is closer than it seems to us, and this cooperation and Polish-Ukrainian friendship will be a foundation for future Europe and peace in future Europe. Thank you.
Dziękuję panu premierowi.
Thank you very
Rzeczywiście
much, Prime Minister.
to ostatnie zdanie
Yes,
napawa
last
nas
sentence
rzeczywiście nadzieją, że
gives us
ten
hope
czas
that
będzie
this time
szybki.
will be
Wierzymy w to,
soon. It will happen
że
soon. We
Ukraina
truly believe
szybko
that
zwycięży,
Ukraine will
ale
prevail
tymczasem
and win the
pani
war
minister na
soon.
pani
But
resorcie
for now,
spoczywa
Minister,
bardzo wiele zadań
your
związanych chociażby z
ministry has a lot of tasks to
prawie
deal
3
with
milionów
due
uchodźców,
to the fact that we have
terrorystów.
almost
Na
3
pewno
million
wśród nich
refugees.
być może nie
Some of
będzie
them
miała
will not
do czego
return
wrócić.
because there won't be
Zostanie
nothing to
tutaj w
return to
Polsce.
for them. They
Jakie,
will remain in Poland.
mamy propozycje
So what
dla
are
nich?
the
W jaki
proposals
sposób,
for them?
będziemy
In
mogli
what
ich
way
adaptować do
can
naszych
we
warunków
adapt them
pracy?
to our
Oni
labour
są,
conditions?
myślę, w Polsce
Well, I
również
think
potrzebni.
They are very much needed in
Dlatego
Poland.
pytanie, jak
Hence my question,
możemy jako Polska sobie
how can
poradzić
we as Poland
na
handle
rynku
it
pracy właśnie
on the labour
obywatelami
market?
Ukrainy.
How can we handle
Szanowny
this
panie premierze,
number
szanowna
of
pani
refugees?
europoseł,
Prime
państwo
Minister,
parlamentarzyści,
dear
szanowni
MEP,
państwo, według sprawowanych
MPs, ladies
funkcji
and
i godności.
gentlemen,
Rzeczywiście
according to
dzisiaj
your functions
zdajemy
and
egzamin
titles.
człowieczeństwa.
Today
Egzamin
it's an exam
człowieczeństwa
on
zdajemy jako
humanity
świat,
that we
zdajemy
are
jako Polska.
passing
I
well
Polska na
as
pewno
the
jest
world
liderem
and as
w
Poland.
wykonaniu
Poland
tego
is definitely the
zadania,
leader
wykonaniu
in
tego
this
zadania jak
task,
najlepiej.
in
Od samego
performing this
początku,
task
od
in the best way
24
possible.
lutego,
From the very beginning,
konsekwentnie
since
byliśmy
24th of
przygotowani,
February,
zostały
we have been
podjęte skoordynowane przez rząd działania,
prepared. We
aby
have
nieść pomoc
undertaken
obywatelom Ukrainy.
coordinated
I ten
tasks and
pierwszy
work
etap to jest
by
przede
the
wszystkim
government
zapewnienie
to help
bezpieczeństwa,
Ukrainians,
schronienia.
to provide
W kolejnym
security and
etapie,
safety
który
for them.
już
In the
właściwie
second
wchodzimy,
stage,
który
second phase
realizujemy,
that we are
to jest przede
actually
wszystkim
already
adaptacja, taki duży pakiet
performing is the
adaptacyjny.
huge adaptation
Blisko 2
package.
miliony 900
Almost
tysięcy
2
Ukraińców przeszło
million
naszą granicę. Na dzień
900,000
dzisiejszy
Ukrainians have
ponad
passed our
milion osób
border.
ma
As for
już nadany
today,
PESEL. Z
more than
tego,
1 million of them
z tej
have
liczby
already
ponad miliona,
have been assigned
połowa
their
to są dzieci, a
personal
druga
ID
część to są
number,
kobiety.
PESEL.
I my
Most
przede
of them
wszystkim,
are
tak jak pani
children
europoseł
and women,
zauważyła,
and
przede
we
wszystkim
as the
powinniśmy
MEP has noticed, we
wykorzystać
should first
przestrzeń
of all
w naszej
try
gospodarce,
to use
abyśmy
the
mogli
space, the gaps
zaadaptować
in our
te
economy
kobiety,
to
tych
adapt
obywateli
those
Ukrainy na
women,
naszym
those
rynku
Ukrainian
pracy.
citizens on
Sytuacja
our
na naszym
labour
rynku
market. The
pracy jest
situation on our
korzystna.
labour market is
Po
quite
pandemii
favorable.
koronawirusa,
After
z
the
którą sobie
coronavirus
znakomicie gospodarczo
pandemic that we
poradziliśmy, mamy
economically
dzisiaj
handled very
stopę
well,
bezrobocia
our
5,4,
unemployment
jesteśmy
rate is
drugim państwem w Europie z
5.4%.
najniższym
We're the second
bezrobociem. I to
country in
przede
Europe
wszystkim
with the
pokazuje,
lowest
że jest ta przestrzeń do
unemployment
zagospodarowania. Te
rate. So
działania
there's
już
space
zostały
to be,
podjęte poprzez programy,
filled
które
by
skierowaliśmy do obywateli
those,
Ukrainy. Na
people,
chwilę
by the
obecną
refugees. We've
mamy
already
już
addressed some
blisko
programs for them.
90
For now we
tysięcy osób,
already have about
90 tysięcy
almost
osób, które podjęło
90,000
pracę
people
po
who have
24
undertaken work
lutego.
after the
Można by
24th
przede
of
wszystkim tą
February in
daną
Poland.
odnieść do
This
właśnie tej liczby
data
około 500
should be
tysięcy
referred to
tych
more than
dorosłych osób,
500,000
które granicę przekroczyło
people who have
i przede
crossed
wszystkim
the
osoby
border.
podejmują zatrudnienie
And,
niekoniecznie w swoich
the people
wyuczonych
who
zawodach,
take,
a ponad połowa z tych
jobs,
osób
it's
są
not
to
only
osoby
in
z
their
wyższym
professions, and
wykształceniem.
more than
Dlatego
half
też
of them have
właśnie na
higher
mocy
degree,
specustawy
higher
wprowadziliśmy
education
rozwiązania,
degree.
które
And so
ułatwiają
we
dostęp do
adopted a
naszego
special
rynku rynku pracy.
to
A
make
więc przede
it
wszystkim
easier
jest
for
to
them to access our labor
odbiurokratyzowanie.
market.
Pracodawcy mają 14 dni na to, aby zgłosić osobę, którą
we get
zatrudnili, i to
14 days to
zatrudnienie jest w pełni
employers to
legalne
report
na terenie Rzeczpospolitej z dostępem do wszystkich świadczeń, które również Ukraińcy, a także inne osoby przed wybuchem wojny, do których mieli dostęp. I teraz w tym pakiecie kolejnym, tym pakiecie adaptacyjnym, przede wszystkim zależy nam na stworzeniu systemowych rozwiązań, aby przede wszystkim dając obywatelom Ukrainy dostęp do pracy, dać tam przysłowiową wędkę i możliwość zostania na terenie Polski i zasilenia polskiej gospodarki. Takie działania organizujemy poprzez adresowane programy dla publicznych służb zatrudnienia, dla samorządów, dla organizacji pozarządowych zajmujących się aktywizacją zatrudnienia. Ten program Razem Możemy Więcej z budżetem około 100 milionów złotych został stworzony razem ze stroną społeczną, ze stroną organizacji pracodawców. Będzie włączony do szerokiego pakietu, który przede wszystkim zapewni naukę języka polskiego, aktywizację zawodową, a także dostęp do łatwiejszej nostryfikacji dyplomów, aby ten potencjał tych osób, które przybyły z Ukrainy do Polski, został odpowiednio wykorzystany. Oczywiście cały czas zdajemy sobie w pełni sprawę, że z tych osób, które już podjęły zatrudnienie, 3/4 są to kobiety, które przybyły do Polski z dziećmi. Dlatego też wprowadziliśmy odpowiednie ułatwienia w specustawie, które umożliwiają zakładanie takich miejsc opieki dla tych dzieci przez przedsiębiorców, także przez same kobiety mogą zakładać działalność gospodarczą, aby przede wszystkim właśnie zapewnić miejsce opieki dla dzieci i dać ten dostęp do pracy. Oczywiście te działania są skoordynowane przez wszystkie resorty, koordynuje te działania pan minister Paweł Szefernaker, które przede wszystkim pozwalają na to, aby polska gospodarka mogła być zasilona tą siłą obywateli Ukrainy, którzy do nas przybyli. A nasze wskaźniki ekonomiczne są bardzo dobre. W ostatnim tygodniu Główny Urząd Statystyczny pokazał wzrost przeciętnego wynagrodzenia, którego wzrost rok do roku jest wyższy o ponad 12%, a więc przewyższa on obecną inflację, co pokazuje, że dynamicznie rozwijająca się gospodarka, silnie rozwijająca się Polska, zrównoważonym, dynamicznym rozwojem również potrzebuje tych rąk do pracy, które przybyli z Ukrainy. I dlatego tutaj tak jest to ważne dla Śląska, dla Śląskiego Ładu, z tej liczby, którą tu wskazałam, blisko 10 000 Ukraińców już pracuje na Śląsku. A więc te wszystkie działania są przede wszystkim tak skoordynowane, aby te ręce do pracy zasiliły naszą gospodarkę.
Dziękuję. Pani minister. I teraz kolejny głos z takiej sfery rzeczywiście gospodarczej. Pan Grzegorz Piechowiak jest jednocześnie pełnomocnikiem rządu do spraw inwestycji zagranicznych. I takie pytanie, w jaki sposób inwestycje zagraniczne mogą przysłużyć się właśnie odbudowie Ukrainy, w jaki sposób również polskie firmy przygotowują się do tego, aby wziąć udział w tym procesie.
Szanowny Panie Premierze, Pani Minister, Pani Europoseł, Państwo parlamentarzyści, Szanowni Państwo. Zacznę może od tego, że już kilka dni po rozpoczęciu wojny strefy ekonomiczne, które mi podlegają, dokonały takiej szybkiej jakby pomocy. Mianowicie znalazły ponad 2 miliony złotych, które zostały przekazane w całości stronie ukraińskiej. Tutaj chciałbym bardzo serdecznie podziękować panu prezesowi Januszowi Michałkowi, bo te 300 000 ze Śląska też powędrowało, to znaczący wkład w pomoc dla Ukrainy. My musimy myśleć w tej chwili w kilku kategoriach, patrząc na gospodarkę. Z jednej strony widzimy olbrzymie w tej chwili zainteresowanie relokacją firm z terenu Ukrainy do
companies
I to
from
są firmy
Ukraine to
zarówno
Poland.
ukraińskie,
They
ale i
include
też
Ukrainian
firmy
companies,
zachodnie,
but
które
also
tam mają swoje
Western
oddziały, tam mają
companies
swoich
that have
podwykonawców.
their
Coraz częściej
branches,
pytają się
subcontractors there in
pytają się
Ukraine. They
nas
more and more
o to,
often
w jaki sposób
ask
możemy
us
pomóc. Myśmy
how we can
przygotowali
help.
poprzez strefy ekonomiczne
We, through the
różnego rodzaju
economic zones, we
powierzchnie,
have provided all kinds
powierzchnie
of
głównie magazynowe do tego, żeby
storage
stworzyć takie warunki relokacji
areas
firm,
to create some conditions
które dzisiaj
for
są na
this
terenie
relocation of
Ukrainy
companies that are
do Polski.
currently based in
Tutaj
Ukraine, so that
bardzo
they
wielka
can move
rola
to Poland.
jest również
Here's a
dla
huge
Śląska, bo
role
to
for
jest
Silesia,
teren, gdzie ludności jest jak
because it's
najwięcej.
an
Ja wiem, że
area
może
where
w
we
samych
have
Katowicach
huge
jest
population.
to
I know that in
bezrobocie już
Katowice this
bardzo niewielkie, ale
unemployment
jest
rate
jeszcze
is very, very
duży teren
small,
i tutaj
but this area is
naprawdę
quite
działalność
huge. So
katowickiej
at this
specjalnej
point,
strefy
the operation
ekonomicznej,
of the
która jest
Katowice
bardzo aktywna
Special Economic Zone, which
właśnie
is
w tej
very
dziedzinie po to,
active in this
żebyśmy mogli takie
respect,
warunki
is
stworzyć.
quite
Kolejna
important
rzecz,
for
to
us to
już
be able
pan
to
premier
create those conditions. Another thing,
powiedział,
the Prime Minister
my
has
musimy się
already
już
mentioned it,
przygotowywać
we
do
already
tego, żeby
need to
pomóc
get prepared
odbudowywać się
for
Ukrainie.
the reconstruction
Tutaj
of Ukraine.
mamy
We'll
świadomość,
have
że my
to
będziemy
help with
takim
it.
hubem
We know that we're
Europy
going to be
Środkowej,
Europe's,
która
Central
będzie w
Europe's
pierwszej
hub
kolejności szła
in this
odbudowywać.
process
I te firmy, zarówno
of
polskie, które
reconstruction,
już w tej
and both the
chwili,
Polish
o których
companies
rozmawiamy,
that we've been talking
przygotowują
about
się do
already
tego,
are
ale
getting
jest wiele firm
prepared
zachodnich,
for
które
it, but there
mówią,
are a
że
lot of
to one by
Western
jednak
companies
chętnie wybudowały jeszcze nowe
say
inwestycje
that they would
w
also
Polsce,
like
bo
to
perspektywicznie
add investments in
chciałyby
Poland because the
uczestniczyć w
perspective
odbudowie,
is that
w
they,
odbudowie
in this way, they
gospodarki
might be involved in the
ukraińskiej.
reconstruction of the
Kolejna rzecz dla
Ukrainian
samej
economy.
Ukrainy.
And one more
Przygotowaliśmy,
thing, as
dedykowaliśmy
regards Ukraine itself,
specjalny
we
program
have
w
prepared
Polskiej
a
Agencji
special program
Inwestycji
in
Handlu
the Polish
Polska,
Agency for
Ukraina
Foreign
w języku
Investment,
ukraińskim,
Poland
gdzie
and Ukraine,
wszyscy przedsiębiorcy,
in the
wszyscy Ukraińcy,
Ukrainian
którzy mają
language, where
jakiekolwiek
all the
potrzeby w
business people,
nawiązaniu
all the
relacji, w
entrepreneurs who
przeniesieniu
need to
swojej
establish
działalności
relationships to
gospodarczej na
relocate
teren
their
Polski, żeby
business to
otrzymywały
Poland so that they can get
takową pomoc. Z tym oczywiście
such
różnie jest,
assistance.
ale
Obviously,
widzę, że zainteresowanie jest
it
w tej
varies
chwili
the
coraz większe
effectiveness of
i
that,
liczymy na
but
to,
we
że
can
będziemy
see
mogli
more and more interest in
spełnić te
that.
wszystkie
And we hope
wymagania,
we'll be able to meet all these
od których
requirements
na które jest takie duże oczekiwanie.
that stem
Poza
from
tym
the expectations
chciałem
so
Państwu
far.
powiedzieć, że
I
jest
would
bardzo
also
wiele
like to
firm
say that there are a
zagranicznych.
lot
Miałem
of foreign
okazję
companies
uczestniczyć w
that
forum
I
polsko-afrykańskim
was
niedawno,
involved in a Polish-African
podczas Expo,
forum during
gdzie
Expo first,
bardzo wiele właśnie
where
krajów afrykańskich
there were
jest
many African
zainteresowanych
countries
tym,
that
żeby
stated their
pomóc
interest
Ukrainie
about
poprzez Polskę.
assisting Ukraine
Powiem
through
taki jeden szczegół,
Poland.
kiedy
Just
podszedł
let
do
me
mnie
share one
jeden z
detail about it.
przedstawicieli
One of the
Delty
representatives
Nigru
of
powiedział mi, że on miał tu nie przyjeżdżać,
the
ale
Niger
ze względu na to, co
Delta
Polska robi dla Ukrainy, to on chciał się
said that
spotkać
he did
z
not want to
Polską i
come,
powiedzieć, że
but
gdybyśmy
due to the
potrzebowali
fact that
jakiejkolwiek
Poland does so much to Ukraine, he
pomocy,
wanted to
zakupu
come only to
minerałów
say
czy
that
innych
if we
rzeczy, to
need to
oni są
buy
gotowi
some raw
współpracować
materials,
z
some
nami po to,
minerals, they are
żeby
ready
pomóc
to
nam,
establish
a przez nas
cooperation to help
Ukrainie.
us and through
Takich
us to help
gestów i
Ukraine.
takich spotkań z
And
przedstawicielami
we've had
innych państw jest w tej chwili bardzo dużo.
many such meetings with
zainteresowanie
representatives of
gospodarką
various
polską,
countries. This interest in
Z
Polish
tego
economy
tytułu jest naprawdę
is
przeogromne. To
really
jest takie, powiedzmy,
huge.
trochę nasze 5 minut w tej chwili, gdzie staliśmy
It's
się
our
liderem.
time,
I o
I may
sankcje,
say,
ale o
we've
całą
become
sferę
leader in
gospodarczą
terms of
staliśmy się
sanctions,
liderem
but in terms
w Europie,
of
ale postrzegani jesteśmy na całym świecie
well,
jako
in Europe,
ci,
but
którzy
also
są
globally,
najbliższymi
we are perceived
przyjaciółmi
as the closest
Ukrainy i
friends
pomagają
of
bardzo
Ukraine
dużo. Ja myślę,
who
że
help
to jest
a
taki
lot.
moment dla całej Polski, ale też
It's the
dla
time
Śląska,
for
żebyśmy mogli
Poland
to
and for Silesia
wykorzystać w pełni,
to
pomagając naszym
use
braciom
it to
na
the fullest to
Ukrainie.
help our brothers and
Bardzo
sisters in
dziękuję
Ukraine.
panu ministrowi.
Thank you, Minister.
Chciałabym teraz
I would
poprosić
also
temat inwazji
like
rosyjskiej na
to, well, the
Ukrainę.
topic
Oczywiście
of Russian invasion,
gości na prawie wszystkich
is
posiedzeniach
present
plenarnych
at
obecnie w
all
Parlamencie
the plenary
Europejskim, również w
sessions
mojej
in the
komisji,
European Parliament, in
ITRE,
my commission,
Komisji rozwoju, innowacji i badań w Parlamencie Europejskim dyskutujemy na tym, jak właściwie uskutecznić też taki plan Marshalla. O tym mówi się, to nie jest, myślę,
and implement the Marshall Plan. I think
akcent,
it's not just something we read on the media or hear on the media, but it will require a lot of effort from the part of the United States and from Europe to prepare such a plan. And I think and I believe that very soon we will be able to implement it.
Również ze swoim komentarzem
I would also like
się do nas teraz pan przewodniczący Komisji ITRE, pan Cristian Silviu Busoi, jest z Rumunii, jest naszym sprzymierzeńcem również w niedawnych głosowaniach na temat CBAM-u. Panie premierze, udało się doprowadzić do tego, że poprawiliśmy rozporządzenie Komisji Europejskiej. Było to naprawdę duże przedsięwzięcie i udało się doprowadzić do tego, że wydłuża się jednak o 2 lata funkcjonowanie w tych kilku sektorach bezpłatnych uprawnień do emisji CO2. Komisja chciała 26 rok, udało nam się, ja prowadziłam te negocjacje do 28 roku. Zobaczymy, jeszcze przed nami głosowanie w Parlamencie Europejskim, potem wiadomo trilogi, Rada.
I
myślę,
Parliament
że
and
tak
then
jak
the
pan premier
Council,
powiedział,
obviously there's a whole
zupełnie
path, but
inaczej
as
dzisiaj
the Prime Minister
już
has
się
said,
negocjuje również
it's
te
a
kwestie
different
klimatyczne.
way of negotiating
Dlatego
this climate
poproszę
issue.
teraz
So now I
pana
would like
przewodniczącego.
to give the floor to the President.
Hello, dear colleagues. I would like to thank Professor Legutko and my colleague from ITRE Committee, Isabella Klotz, for the invitation to address to you today and show the commitment of the committee that I'm leading, the Committee of Industry, Research and Energy from European Parliament, towards supporting Ukraine in these terrible times and beyond, in the immediate future, to thrive in the reconstruction as a strong country with European values. We all have witnessed in the last months how the free and democratic Europe is challenged as Ukraine is under invasion. We condemned strongly the Russian military aggression, illegal aggression, and we stand with the people of Ukraine in their fight to defend their country, their lives, and their freedom. We admire their heroism in defending our common values and will continue doing our utmost to help them in their struggle for freedom and independence. We all know that this outrageous war will also have important repercussions on different sectors, and we are all witnessing its effects on energy and security of supply, its cybersecurity threats, its effect on research and innovation cooperation. First of all, we have made an important step into helping Ukraine to reinforce its security of supply energy independence, synchronizing as quickly as possible the Ukrainian power grid with the European continental grid. That also included the synchronization of the Moldova power grid, another country that wants to be able to choose its energy future. Europe can no longer remain dependent on Russian gas. That requires increasing our storage capacity and the amount of LNG imports through EU-level coordination. Against this background, the Commission has proposed on the 23rd of March a targeted amendment to the gas package with the aim to urgently ensure a sufficient level of gas storage ahead of next winter and be better prepared for unexpected and potentially longer-lasting supply difficulties. The security of supply and the solidarity we are showing now towards Ukraine and its people, it's something that united Europe, and it is part of the reconstruction in Ukraine as well. It is a very important step, but it's only the first one. Yet it is important to start thinking on how the European Union and the international community can give hope to Ukrainians and reassure them that they will be able to rebuild their country and return to their normal lives once the Russian aggression is stopped. We need a clear commitment. It is very important that we continue with sending aid to Ukraine and to sending aid also when reconstruction programs would be put in place. Recognizing that Ukraine needs its reconstruction along the need to continue its reforms is paramount. But this investment needs also support from outside, from us, from the Union. We need to encourage inflows of foreign capital and technology transfers. We need to strengthen the research, innovation and technological cooperation under Horizon Europe program that Ukraine is part of now. And we should not forget as well that the rebuilding of Ukraine needs also to happen around the principle of a zero carbon future, innovation is very important, digitalization extremely important, new technologies could be given to Ukraine in order to rebuild a modern country after the aggression is stopped. If we commit to it, it will accelerate the recovery and further integration of Ukraine into the global economy. We mustn't forget all the actions taken in the Union so far to swiftly help those arriving to take up their right to care, their right to education, or their right to work, as well as vocational training. The Commission has set up a dedicated European system for swift transfers of persons in need of medical care among EU member states, supported by the EU Civil Protection Mechanism. The Commission is also working hand in hand with the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control of the European Medicines and the European Medicines Agency to provide public health guidance and training, monitor the supply of medicinal products, and provide appropriate support to member states. Flexibility in the Erasmus Plus funding program will also be used to support the education of refugee students and the integration of staff of higher education institutions who are fleeing the war. The Commission has added the Ukrainian language to the EU Skills Profile tool for non-EU nationals and will also pilot a new talent pool to match skills with job vacancies. The Commission is also working on developing new guidelines to facilitate recognition of professional qualifications obtained in Ukraine and working with social partners to help them inform the private sector about the rights under temporary protection and the programs available. I'm not only the Industry, Research and Energy Committee chairman, but I also represent Romania in the European Parliament, and my country, Romania, as well, has been strongly active into receiving those arriving from Ukraine, facilitating corridors at borders, assistance, food, care, and help at borders, offering asylum and housing. Local NGOs, companies, and ordinary citizens have mobilized quickly to help the Ukrainian refugees. People started to create informal networks or social media, offering free accommodation, free transport from the border, medical services, and other basic necessities. The Romanian authorities, President Klaus Iohannis, Prime Minister Ciucă, reacted immediately, and we have all witnessed a high degree of involvement and solidarity towards Ukraine. The government has set up camps with tents, beds, and electricity for refugees at the Sighet and Siret crossing points from eastern Ukraine, as well as at Isaccea in the south, close to the Ukrainian port of Odessa. The government in Romania has also declared that any Ukrainian citizen is entitled to medical assistance, and the children will be able to attend local schools. Free railway transport is also being provided. And also Romania participated to all decisions at the European Union level, at an international level, with our strategic partners like United States of America, in order to really help concretely the Ukrainian people to fight against this illegal war, illegal aggression, and also to try to put in practice the most efficient sanctions against Russia in order to make them stop this aggression. But, of course, we should start to think even from now to the reconstruction phase, and that's why your event is highly welcomed. I'm very sorry that I cannot participate in person or participate in a direct remote connection, as I will be in Washington these days, trying also to work more closely with the United States of America, Congress, and most important and relevant stakeholders in on the energy issues, digital issues, cybersecurity issues. But I wish you all the success, and I thank you for the invitation.
Bardzo dziękuję również panu przewodniczącemu. Cieszę się, że skierował do nas te słowa też z perspektywy właśnie rumuńskiej. Panie premierze, pani minister, panie ministrze, chcę wam bardzo serdecznie podziękować za udział
I would like to thank you for participating in our event, Silesian Deal for Ukraine. I remember 4 months ago we met here on Subam. It's now being proceeded in the parliament. It's the final stage. Let's hope that the next Silesian deal is when we talk about Ukraine having won, about Ukraine's possibility to reconstruct and being safe. But if Ukraine is safe and secure, we are safe. Europe is safe and the whole world is safe. Thank you very much.
I szanowni państwo, możemy teraz rozpocząć drugą część naszej konferencji, tak zwany panel wsparcia, jak go nazwałam. Będziemy dyskutować teraz właśnie o tym, w jaki sposób gospodarczo dotyka nas ta sytuacja na Ukrainie, co możemy zrobić też w tej kwestii.
What we can do on this matter with regards to fuels and energy. We're in Silesia, looking at Ms. Beata Daszyńska-Muzyczka, President of the National Economic Bank,
Pan Wojciech
Jan
Balczun,
Chrząszcz, also
były
please
prezes
join us. Mr.
kolei
Wojciech
ukraińskich,
former president of the
która
Ukrainian
jest tym nerwem
Railway,
gospodarki i też jesteśmy ciekawi informacji z
nervous
Ukrainy. I
system
pan
of the economy, we
prezes
might say,
katowickiej
and
specjalnej
the
strefy
president
ekonomicznej
of the Katowice
Janusz
Special
Michałek
Economic
są gośćmi
Zone,
naszej
Mr. Janusz
drugiej
Michałek,
części.
are the guests in
I od
our
razu,
second
żeby nie
panel.
przedłużając, przechodzę do pytania. Pani prezes, pani bank się podjął takiego bardzo innowacyjnego przedsięwzięcia. Nazywacie państwo to 3W, czyli węgiel, woda, wodór. Wydawałoby się, że węgiel to już jest taki materiał schyłkowy, ale jeżeli pani tutaj jest i pani zaprezentuje nam ten właśnie projekt, tę wizję 3W, to myślę, że tutaj na Śląsku będziemy bardzo zadowoleni. Pani prezes.
Szanowni Państwo, przedstawiciele Parlamentu, Europarlamentu, bardzo dziękuję też za zaproszenie. I może rozpocznę od tego, zanim dojdziemy do wody, wodoru i węgla, to, że jesteśmy świadkami ogromnej transformacji.
We need to emphasize that we're in the process of transition, global, economic and social transition. This transition started when the crisis related to the COVID pandemic started. Then we saw that the economic model that had been used for years no longer function actually
na całym świecie. Okazało się, że te modele nie funkcjonują. To był czas na refleksję, jak powinniśmy dzisiaj funkcjonować, jak zmienić modele funkcjonowania, jak dywersyfikować źródła, dostaw materiałów, surowców, itd. Ale to też transformacja społeczna. Społeczeństwo zaczęło również inaczej funkcjonować właśnie od momentu kryzysu spowodowanego koronawirusem. Zamknęliśmy większość społeczeństw w domach. Zaczęliśmy stosować więcej pracy tak naprawdę w zamkniętych pomieszczeniach. Dzisiaj zastanawiamy się, jak odbije się to też chociażby na młodzieży, która musiała przenieść się w naukę zdalną i procesów socjalizacji i funkcjonowania razem też zostały te procesy zatrzymane. Ale gdybyśmy tylko popatrzyli na kryzys spowodowany COVID-em, to dzisiaj byśmy prawdopodobnie już mogli myśleć, jak odbudowywać wszystko, jak budować spokojnie modele, ale przychodzi kolejny kryzys. Kryzys właśnie spowodowany wojną na Ukrainie, ogromną, potworną, bestialską agresją ze strony Rosji. Często powtarzane przez nas ostrzeżenia
these
dopiero dzisiaj
warnings, we
nabierają
repeat
sensu
it
i
many
wiele
times,
państw na świecie
now make a lot of
rozumie, o czym
sense. Many
mówiliśmy jako
countries in the
Polska,
world
rozumie,
start
o czym
understanding
mówiliśmy
what
jako
we were
Polska, jako
talking about as
Ukraina,
Poland, as
że to
Ukraine,
będzie inny tak naprawdę
that
świat, jeśli ta
it
wojna
would
się
be
rozpocznie.
a
I
different
tego
world
doświadczamy.
once
Dzisiaj
such a war
coraz częściej
starts.
mówi się nie tyle o
And that's what we're
bezpieczeństwie
experiencing now.
cyberbezpieczeństwie,
We're no
ale o
longer talking
bezpieczeństwie
about
energetycznym. A co wojna
cyber security
pokazuje?
and security
Że
in general,
potrzebne
but
jest
about
bezpieczeństwo
energy
żywnościowe.
security. But the war also shows us that we need food
właśnie zboża
security,
z
because
Ukrainy i
imports of
Rosji
crops,
to jest
40%
właśnie
of that,
kontynent afrykański. Przed jakimi
from Ukraine
wyzwaniami
and Russia go to
staniemy właśnie
African
w momencie
continent? What are
potrzeby
going to be the
dywersyfikacji
challenges when we
zasobów,
face the need of
źródeł
diversification
energii
of sources of
i innego
energy,
podejścia do budowania
sources
modeli
of raw
gospodarczych,
materials, and
to jeszcze
other
jest przed nami.
approach to
I dlaczego
building
teraz
economic
robię ten
models? It's
most
still ahead
taki
of us.
do
Why
wody,
am I
wodoru i
constructing
węgla?
this
Bo
link
bez
to
wody,
water,
bez
coal
wody
and
niczego
hydrogen?
nie wyhodujemy.
Because without water
Zasoby
we
wody
cannot
na Ziemi
grow
to jest
anything. The resources of
2,5%
water
to
on
stanowi tylko i wyłącznie
globe
woda pitna.
in the world
Nie,
is
woda
2.5% of that
1%
is
globalnie to jest woda pitna. W samym tylko
water
kontynencie europejskim 100
which is
milionów
not
ludzi nie ma
saline
dostępu do
water,
wody
and only
pitnej.
1% is
Jeżeli
drinkable
popatrzymy, z
water.
jakimi
A lot of
wyzwaniami
people don't
będziemy
have
mieć w
access to it. If
kontekście
we look at the
bezpieczeństwa
challenges
żywnościowego,
we're going to
to bez
face
wody
with
sobie
regards
po
to
prostu
food
z tym nie
security,
poradzimy.
without water we
Dlatego
cannot handle it. So
melioracja, retencja
retention,
i zarządzanie
melioration,
wodą w obiegu
and
zamkniętym
management
będzie miało
of
tak
closed
ogromne
circuits
znaczenie
of water will
właśnie
be
też dla
so
budowy
important
bezpieczeństwa
for the
żywnościowego.
construction of food security.
Woda to takie dwa składniki,
Water
H2O,
is
czyli mamy tam
composed
też
of
wodór.
two components,
A wodór
one of them
dzisiaj
being
chyba nikomu nie trzeba
hydrogen.
mówić, że jest paliwem
Hydrogen
przyszłości.
is
Dzisiaj wiemy, jak go
also the fuel
magazynować,
of the
wiemy, jak
future. We
go
know how to store
transportować.
it, how to transport
Potrzebujemy
it.
go bardziej zazielenić. Jesteśmy
Need to make
trzecim
it a little bit
w Europie,
greener.
piątym na
We
świecie
are third
producentem
in
wodoru,
Europe and
ale
fifth
jest to w
in
większości
globally
wodór szary.
producer
Dzisiaj
of
musimy się
hydrogen,
zastanowić,
but it's
w
grey
jaki sposób,
hydrogen,
jakimi
most of it. But now
technologiami
we need
będziemy w stanie
to think about
zazielenić ten wodór
technologies that
lub też
will
w
make
jaki
it
sposób
greener.
korzystać
Or we
z
need to
wodoru
think
jako
how to
takiego
use
podstawowego
hydrogen as
źródła
the basic
energetycznego, też być
source of
może nawet w
energy,
obiegu zamkniętym,
perhaps in
bo
a
zawsze tam
closed
się może
circuit,
pojawić
because
woda.
water
Dlatego
may always
3W
be
jest
present
taką
there. That's why
konstrukcją,
our
która
3W
łączy
program
te
is a
wszystkie
structure
trzy pierwiastki,
that
trzy
combines
zasoby,
all
bo tak
these
akurat one się
elements or
składają.
resources.
Kiedy rozpoczynaliśmy naszą przygodę
When we started
ustanowienia
our
takiej idei
adventure of
3W,
establishing these
i powiedzieliśmy, że tam
3W
jest
idea,
węgiel, to
and we said
większość
one
nas
of those
patrzyła,
W's is
o co
coal.
wam chodzi z tym
Most
węglem,
of
przecież
them
węgiel jest passé, trzeba
thought
zapomnieć
like,
o węglu
why
i o nim nie
coal?
mówić.
Coal is out-fashioned.
tak.
We should forget about coal or
Najmniej
carbon
efektywnie jest
actually.
oczywiście spalać węgiel w
Obviously,
piecu,
the least effective
ale
way of
jest on
using it
dzisiaj
is to
podstawą
burn it in a stove,
bezpieczeństwa
but it's actually the
energetycznego. Dzisiaj na
basis of energy
bezpieczeństwo
security
energetyczne
today.
patrzymy
Energy
zupełnie inaczej.
security
Ale
takes a
węgiel to
different
nie
meaning
tylko i
these
wyłącznie
days,
spalanie,
but
to
coal is
nowoczesne
not
technologie
only
węglowe,
combustion,
które
it's
mogą budować
also
przewagi
modern
konkurencyjne.
carbon-based
To medycyna,
technologies. It's also
to
medicine that
chirurgia,
may give us
kardiologia,
advantage.
kosmetologia,
It's cosmetology, it's
to
sports, it's
nowoczesne tak
surgery,
naprawdę
it's
przemysł
modern
chociażby sportowy, ale
sport
też
industry, but also
motoryzacyjny.
automotive
Wszystkie bolidy
industry.
są zrobione z włókien węglowych.
All the sports
Bo
bolids
jest
are
efektywniejszy niż
made of
aluminium. Ale zastawki do
carbon
serca również
fiber.
wstawia się z włókien
But
węglowych.
also
To jest najbardziej wytrzymałe
valves
i
in the
jest
heart are
najbardziej
made of
plastyczne.
carbon fiber because it's the most
Piękna historia
plastic
dla
and
samego
it's
Śląska,
the most
jeżeli byśmy chcieli
durable.
oczyścić
And a beautiful
wodę
story for Silesia. If we want to
powietrza,
purify
to właśnie
water
przy zastosowaniu węgla
and
amorficznego czy węgla
and
aktywnego,
air
który
is
pomoże
by use
oczyścić.
of
Piękna
amorphic or
historia dla
activated
samego
coal,
Śląska.
carbon,
Lub też
that
nowoczesne
can help
technologie
purifying it.
nanostruktur
And all
węglowych,
the
czyli
carbon
węgiel,
nanostructure, grafen,
grafen, który znamy,
that we know,
nanorurki węglowe, czy też włókna węglowe, o których już
carbon
wspomniałam.
nanofibers.
Dzisiaj łopaty do właśnie
Today,
budowania
stoves
wielkich śmigieł
for
OZE na wodzie
the
i na lądzie
parts
również
of
są
big
właśnie z włókien
windmills are
przy
also
tym, jak
made
mamy
of
wyzwania
carbon
dotyczące
fiber.
stali,
And when we have challenges related to steel, perhaps carbon fiber can be a material that can be used in the future because it's 8 times more durable and 10 times lighter. These are technologies of the future. If we are to think about this changing model of functioning of economy globally, we face deglobalization. The functioning of societies changes. Societies find more solidarity around a different kind of development, not the same that we've been repeating for the last 50 years. It means that the young people we have in Poland, in Europe and globally will be open to involvement in a way that these new technologies start entering our lives and our functioning and build competitive advantage. I think that thanks to those technologies, together with our friends from Ukraine, we'll be able to reconstruct the economy of Ukraine. Thank you very much. Thank you, President. It's a very interesting challenge. I think we will be watching it, and Silesia will be highly involved. And now we have the President of the Central Mining Institute with us here. Thank you for coming and welcome. And we look with more hope to those new technologies. They might let the mining sector survive. But it's not about it. The fact that this carbon, that is a huge value for us, these new technologies will help to maintain it. Just let me say one more sentence. For this idea, the most important thing is to combine, to link the scientific environment. We have the biggest number of carbon-related patents, and so combining the academic world, research world, administration and business, that's something that can speed up the development. Thank you very much. I would now like to give the floor to the Voivod. Well, pandemic was a huge challenge, but now we have another challenge, refugees. In the Silesian Voivodeship, according to the information I have, we have about 180,000 people that came from Ukraine. How do you cope with it? It's a huge challenge. Thank you for this question, the MEP, Minister, all the MPs, President, all the presidents, all the presidents present in the world, all the local government representatives. I would like to welcome all of you, ladies and gentlemen. As the MEP has said, we have almost 200,000 refugees at present. It is indeed a huge challenge for local government and government administration here in Silesia, to everybody who has so many refugees in the region. I would like to tell you a little bit about how we help people in Silesia and how it all started and how it all happened in the last 2 months, and I will try to summarize those 2 months in very few sentences. So it all starts from them coming here. They mainly come by trains, not regular railway track, but also the broad track, because it reaches this region. It goes as far as to our voivodeship. So at the very beginning, there were a lot of them coming here. So we started to establish, we thought that we should have to establish an information base at the central, at the station, train station in Katowice, because that's where the most of them come to us. But it turned out that people come to us with their pets. They come with cats, guinea pigs, parrots, dogs. Well, some love rabbits. They come with rabbits. They bring all the animals they have with them. And it turned out that the vet point at the train station was very important. to provide services for the pets they
Ale też
brought.
pamiętajmy, że przyjeżdżając
But
nie mieli
let's
przy sobie karmy dla
remember
zwierząt, więc
that
to
when they
wszystko,
were
to wszystko
coming
były
here, they did
wyzwania. Trzeba
not
było
bring
właśnie nawet na takie
dog
drobne
food
rzeczy jak karma dla
or
zwierząt
pet food. We need to pay
uwagę.
attention to such
Na
minor
dworzec
details, to such
przyjeżdżały
small
matki z
things.
małymi dziećmi.
There were mothers coming
Czasami
to the
wiemy,
railway
że
station
dworce
with
nie należą do
little children, and we
najbezpieczniejszych.
know
W
that
związku
railway
z tym
stations
bardzo
are
nam
not the
zależało na
safest
tym,
places
żeby
in the world.
wydzielić
So we
pomieszczenia tylko dla
decided
matek i
to
dzieci.
create
Obrazy
some
na dworcu
premises,
były.
some rooms
Jak
and
państwo też
space
za
for
chwilkę
mothers with
zobaczycie
little
wokół dworca,
children. And as you will see soon,
powstało miasteczko.
there's a
Niektórzy mówili, co to za czerwone
kind
miasteczko.
of
A to
tent
miasteczko
village
Państwowej
that was
Straży
created
Pożarnej.
by the
Namioty,
State Fire
gdzie
Service. These are
była
tents
ciepła strawa,
where we have
gdzie
warm
było
food
również serce dla tych
and
ludzi.
a lot of heart
I z
for
tych
those
namiotów
people.
Staraliśmy
And
się
from those
rozwozić
tents, we
albo do
tried
punktu
to
recepcyjnego,
transport those
dużego
people to
punktu
reception
recepcyjnego w
point
mieście ogrodów. I tu
in the City
dziękuję
of Gardens.
bardzo
It's a
panu
big
prezydentowi Katowic
reception point. I would like to thank
za to,
the
że tam
the mayor of
mogliśmy ten
Katowice
wielki
at
punkt
this point
recepcyjny
for
postawić,
this opportunity to
albo od razu
establish
małymi
this reception
samochodami
point, or
po
by
całym województwie.
small cars. We just brought them into various locations all over the
Na samym
voivodeship.
początku
Most of them
uchodźców do powiatów cieszyńskiego i
went
żywieckiego.
to Żywiec and
Pytaliśmy,
Cieszyn
skąd tam aż
powiats.
tyle?
We asked
Okazało się, że
why
kierunek
so many,
słowacki
but it
również,
turned out
jak
that
tylko przechodzili
Slovakia
granicę, chcieli być jak najbliżej jednak
turned out to be
swojego
quite
domu i zostawali
attractive.
tam.
So
A
when they
tam gościnność
crossed
górali
the
była dosyć
border,
duża
they just stayed
i
there
w tej
because the
chwili
mountaineers
mamy
welcomed them
praktycznie naprawdę
warmly,
bardzo dużo
and we really
uchodźców
have a lot
na
of
południu
refugees
województwa.
in the south of the voivodeship.
Tak samo bardzo
the
ważną
same
rzeczą było stworzenie
thing
punktu medycznego.
was to create
Takiego
this
punktu, gdzie każdy mógł
medical
przyjść i uzyskać
station
pomoc lekarską,
where everybody
pielęgniarską.
could come and get the
Pamiętajmy, że
support
niektórzy
of a
jechali
doctor,
kilka dni,
of a nurse.
więc potrzebowali
We
tej
have to remember some of them were
wyraźnej
in the journey for several days and they
punkcie
needed just
ponad
first
1500
aid,
osób
first
skorzystało
support.
z pomocy
More
właśnie
than
medycznej.
500,000 people actually
Następnym
use medical
takim
assistance
punktem,
at this,
gdzie
in this
gromadziły
station.
się osoby, które nie chciały
And
wyjeżdżać z
another
Katowic.
place where people who
nie
did
miały
not want
jeszcze
to leave
swojego
Katowice were
planu na
gathered and they
dalsze-
did not
na
have
dalsze
any plans
przebywanie w
about
województwie,
their
to
further
właśnie
stay in
wielki
Silesia
punkt recepcyjny.
was this
obok
big
Urzędu
reception
Wojewódzkiego.
point
Okazało
right
się,
next to the
że
voivodeship
Przez ten
office.
punkt przeszły
It turned out
tysiące
that there were
osób.
thousands of
Były
refugees
noce,
who
gdzie połowa pociągu,
actually
połowa
went
składu, gdzieś
past
500
that.
osób
There were like
naraz w
nights where
takim punkcie
500
się
people, the
znalazły.
whole
W
train
związku z tym należało mieć
were
zaplecze,
allocated
nawet
in
magazynowe,
that
gdzieś zgromadzić wodę,
in those premises. We
jedzenie,
had to have enough
jedzenie
food,
dla
enough water,
mięsińskich. W związku
some
z tym
food for the
stworzyliśmy
youngest
taką
refugees.
możliwość
So we created this
w westybulu, w
opportunity
pięknym miejscu Urzędu
in the
Wojewódzkiego. Tam
vestibule,
w tej
in
chwili
a
jest
beautiful
magazyn,
location
który
in
obsługuje
the voivodeship
właśnie
office.
wielki
We have a
punkt
storage
recepcyjny.
yard
ogrodów.
there that services the City of
W tej
Garden
chwili jest
reception
tam
point.
160 łóżek.
And we have
Na
160
zdjęciach widzicie
beds
państwo,
at this
jak
point
wygląda
there.
ten punkt
In the
recepcyjny.
pictures you can see
Staramy
the
się
reception
wszędzie,
point. We try
żeby oprócz
to
tego,
be,
żeby zapewnić pomoc,
helpful not only to
zapewnić
provide assistance, but also to give our hearts.
do tego serca. To nie tylko wolontariusze, bo ich jest bardzo dużo. Mamy ponad 900 umów z wolontariuszami, ale również duża część pracowników Śląskiego Urzędu Wojewódzkiego, która dyżuruje dzień w noc. Nawet tutaj na sali mamy
and
osoby,
regional office who
właśnie
actually are on duty
przyszły
day
z
and
dyżuru
night.
nocnego,
Here even we have
bo
people who have come to
mają
here from
chyba
their
trzy
night
albo
shift
trzy noce
because they have 2 or 3 nights their shifts, and that point where over 1,000 people are actually provided with sleeping places at fire stations, and there are a few or even several people in one room. Those people who got to the fire brigade premises feel really perfectly well. I was yesterday with wishes to some of those centers, even with up to 20 people in one room. Those people didn't want to leave those premises because local inhabitants provided them a lot of heart and assistance. Very quickly they got their ID numbers arranged for them. And for example, in Katowice, in Lipoviec, all of them are employed, are working. One person is a retired person, but that person at that time is taking care of children who stayed at the premises. Well, in spite of the fact that school and preschool, actually all children are already enrolled there, but local community, small local governments helped a lot. And here I would like to very kindly thank, addressing Madam Minister with this, that all the money we need, because, for example, now already 50 million zlotys have been transferred to local municipalities for the aid of what we call the 12th and 13th part. Well, the 12th, it is the institutional support through hotels and but the 13th, it's 400 zlotys for individuals as aid. We do all our utmost in order to provide second home for those people, although we know it is very difficult. To all of you who are helping, and here in this room there are many people of goodwill whom I personally even addressed with requests for help. I do thank you all. You all display the greatness of your hearts, Madam MP. Great many thanks. Thank you very much, Mr. Voivod, for such moving input, telling us what Silesian region is doing for the refugees. I also know, I talked to some of you about what you are preparing. I'm looking at Ms. Katarzyna Dudkiewicz, the president. We talked about the support of Polish Energy Group for all refugees, and I think we will keep doing this. We will be sharing our hearts because we know what Ukraine is fighting for. Now let me hand over the floor to President Wojciech Balczun, who in 2016 till 2017 was president of Ukrainian Railways. It is a vast company. We know that railways is the nervous system of economy. Ukraine, as Mr. Prime Minister mentioned, will have to shift and change their model of operation. You were there. You saw how it works, how it operates. And a question now, can Ukraine utilize also our innovative potential, management potential, in order to be able, hopefully, soonest possible, to take up the quick development challenge? Honorable MEP, thank you very much for this invitation for me to participate in this conference today in the panel. Honorable Madam Minister, honorable ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to be here in Silesia, in Katowice, because I studied in Upper Silesia. I spent 10 years living here, and I gained my PhD in Silesia, and my first professional steps were here. And my wife is a Silesian woman from Chorzów, and although I have been living for over 20 years in Warsaw, but Silesia is very close to my heart because I managed to actually drag my parents-in-law to Warsaw to live with us, and somehow they are surviving and enjoying the stay there. But I would like to tell you history in 3 blocks: what was there, what is here now, and what will happen or should happen in future. This we all have been through this tragic time. We are helping Ukraine, the Ukrainians, and I myself have a Ukrainian family in my home, and we yesterday had Ukrainian mother and daughters were preparing the meal, so it was a great emotional experience for us. But at the same time, we have to keep in mind that before this war, and this is also my experience, Ukraine, on the one hand, had a vast economic potential, unimaginable. There are setups you can find on the internet from what perspective Ukraine, how much it meant for global economy. Number 4, cereal producer globally, number 1 producer of sunflower oil, rare earth metals. Well, that's why it is actually such an attractive bite for the aggressor who unfortunately attacked Ukraine. But at the same time, a country which was very far away from us, well, from the perspective of organization and mentality, and from what environment they had to actually crawl out. We had it easier reforming our country for years because we had not been such an integral part of Soviet Union, of the communist bloc. We were a satellite country, so we relatively quickly freed ourselves from the Russian chains. They had the whole system and legal order very deeply rooted in Soviet reality, and they had it very difficult to leave that. And as Mr. Prime Minister mentioned, the foundation or the core part being common corruption. I won the contest for the head of Ukraine Railways. It is the largest company, largest employer in Ukraine. At my time, it was over 300,000 people employed. I had that number of employees, a huge state-in-state and company without which Ukrainian economy was not possible to operate. And for example, if we say that in Europe, in Poland included, out of the whole volume of transported goods, several percent actually travels on rail. At that time when I was there, it was over 85%. So one may say that everybody who had a real serious economic activity run in Ukraine was dependent on railways, and that actually resulted in the fact that I had the opportunity, in inverted commas, to see Ukraine from the true real side and perspective. And unfortunately, lots of decisions and activities were actually adjusted to the interest of oligarchs. I assumed that I would manage to actually bypass those reefs. Quite long I was on such an extreme position. They didn't know how to cope with me because I took up real reforms, because this is what I thought. I was invited there to really reform Ukrainian railways. It appeared not to be fully that. And various interests were crossing their interests of national institutions, the point of which was actually launching credit lines to finance in a country like Ukraine, and interests of bosses, presidents of banks, managers. They were after pushing these things through. And I remember the first weeks when I started managing Ukrainian railways, immediately a few ambassadors showed up in my office. Ambassador of Canada, ambassador of Belgium. I was invited to the embassy of the US, and everybody initially said that they were actually very supportive for Ukrainian railways reform. But after squeezing it up, it appeared that each of them had specific lobbying tasks to carry out to the interest of their companies. I remember discussions with a few serious advisors who were hired or delegated by large states to help reforming Ukraine. And when I presented to such a person the whole plan of reform I wanted to implement, I saw his face case was being bored. And then it appeared that truly he was after organizing efficient transfer of trains with cereals from Lvov to Odessa, because he was hired by a private company that had some interest there. I am revealing to you some actually backstage situation, but it helps understand you how it really works, because we have the layer of beautiful words, declarations, signed letters of intent and memorandums, which in Ukraine were signed mainly for PR reasons, and for years they had been feeding public opinion, and not much resulted from those. And behind all that, there were specific interests of specific countries and large companies and corporations. And here, I'm not hiding the fact that I felt a deficit of our activity, because Poland should quite naturally be the first filter and the first choice for Ukraine. I remember when I saw the map of railway lines, a huge map in my office, in a huge office with a large aquarium with sea fish, roughly this size, and you know, such Byzantine style, which is or was at that time part of that system. And in that map there were transport corridors connecting with Odessa, Belarus, and Russia, and Donbas, and Hungary, whereas with Poland it was just LHS line marked. LHS is of strategic importance for us, but from their perspective it looked completely different. And being, one may say, a couple dozen times at meetings at the Council of Ministers office, I was invited there roughly once a week, and I had an opportunity to see how it worked, what negotiations internationally looked like. And I had a very big dispute with Germany, because still Angela Merkel's government actually granted a big loan for Ukraine, for Donbas, and that loan was granted so that it had to finance refurbishment of locomotives, based on the fact that a German company bought Russian spare parts and was to deliver them through Ukraine. I did not accept it, so actually a diplomatic scandal resulted from it even. And the whole picture showed me that we have to very pragmatically approach these relations. And this situation, which is of course tragic now, we are actually feeling it. It is, I don't dare say it is an opportunity, but it creates a possibility for us to take the right positions in those relations. And now, making use of this great demand, they have a giant problem with supply of goods. They are cut off from the Black Sea. They are searching for and signing agreements. I'm very glad that the agreements with railways has been signed, and that there is thinking in companies, thinking these categories, the program for rebuilding Ukraine after the war. But only for this year, there is estimation that 25 million tons or more of the additional goods can come here. We are prepared for it. So, well, nobody had been prepared for it. So we have to implement extraordinary procedures related to absorption of this certification of railway carriages to be simplified, so that it doesn't take as much time as it does by standard, but rather than that, to allow them that Ukrainian railway carriages with our chassis to be traveling without additional formalities, because they are not able to transport it through Romania. They keep asking every day, practically. I have inquiries from Ukrainian companies every day whether we can help them in some scope. Silesian economic mission for Ukraine. This is some kind of idea, of practical idea. That means, firstly, we have to have a structure, a formal structure in place, or a plenipotentiary of the regional management, or somebody who will have the title to practically start talking at the level of governmental partners and state institutions in Ukraine, and at the level of companies which need it. Definitely there must be also a structure in place that will, soon as possible, at least initially, well, because as long as military activities are in progress, this will not happen, that companies, all of companies will start going there. But there must be somebody who will go there and start making foundations for common activities. And what I wanted to highlight, these activities will be both ways. I mean, on the one hand, our Polish companies have a great opportunity to participate in the reconstruction of Ukraine in this famous Marshall Plan, 120 billion euros or maybe more, and let us wish Ukraine victory, and this will happen for sure. We have to take pragmatic approach, but we have transfer of technology demands and activities of Ukrainian companies moving to Poland, and from here they want to be influencing the whole system. Well, we might talk hours about it, so sorry for boring you. Thank you, Mr. President, but also Mr. President touched on this subject, which actually I passed on to Janusz Michałek, President of Katowice Economic Zone, Special Economic Zone. Companies go bankrupt there. They cannot be developing in Ukraine. So is there a chance for them here in Poland? How can they participate in general all Special Economic Zone?
Thank you very much for your invitation. The Prime Minister has already mentioned it at the opening of the European Economic Congress that the best world, well, the whole world observes the conflict. We have shortened chains of supply, replacement of production from Ukraine, from Belarus, from Russia, from further parts of Asia where the supplies are limited. And it seems that Poland can be helpful here. And the Silesian Voivodeship is the best location in Poland. And the Katowice Special Economic Zone is one of such places that can be very helpful here. We've been doing it. The pandemic of COVID-19, the Poland, and in the COVID pandemic, we have used this opportunity. These have been record years, the last 2 years, more than 1 billion decisions on the support for the 102 decisions. So it's our record we achieved last year. So it shows us that Silesian Voivodeship is a fantastic place to live and work. But what we're most happy about is the fact that these were our Polish entrepreneurs that used this opportunity. We enchanted the stereotype that the special economic zone, well, the name staying, but the revolutionary laws of Mateusz Morawiecki made our entrepreneurs notice this opportunity. So we have many more decisions for Polish entrepreneurs as compared to foreign entrepreneurs, and there's much more capital allocated to them. And this tendency persists. We've been having this crisis. Obviously, nobody can foresee what's going to happen in the situation of war. We see some problems already. The Prime Minister mentioned it. Many investors are thinking about whether they should invest more or not. We see there's some obstruction, but like I said, well, as the Prime Minister said, let's look for our opportunities. It's a great opportunity for us, for our entrepreneurs in Poland, in Silesia. We have fantastic entrepreneurs. We have fantastic companies. There's a lot of companies that can fulfill their goals, economic goals in Ukraine. So we as an economic zone know that what's going on, apart from those long-term effects, we have to help our friends in Ukraine, thousands of young people, children, women. So we are very actively involved in the whole process. We have our experience in the COVID pandemic, gained in the COVID pandemic of combating unemployment. We have entrepreneurs who invested loads of money to create 90,000 jobs. So it's a huge market, labor market. It's very important for us because almost 10,000 people already work in that zone. So, well, this conflict could have halted production here, but due to mutual assistance and help, due to the fact that we have these interesting projects and where we allow women to work in the positions which, due to stereotypes we had, are now available for them. We support children, we prepare trips for them. There's a lot of joy and huge heart we give to our friends from Ukraine. But what the Prime Minister has mentioned also, direct help, financial help, and also huge activity in the economic zone. Dozens of companies are looking for the possibility to allocate their business from Ukraine, from Belarus. Many of our global clients who have production facilities, and we were in a way losing with them because the labor costs were lower in Ukraine, but now we're having kind of advantage. I know we're behind schedule, so I'm not going to talk much longer, but I think this conflict, it's a horrible tragedy, but from our perspective, we need to give our heart, but we may have some optimism. Maybe I should not say that we are to gain on it, but I think it's an opportunity that can be used by Polish entrepreneurs. Thank you very much. So yes, support for Ukraine and mutual support, that's our biggest challenge. Thank you. Thank you, President. Thank you, Voivod. Thank you very much. Now, let me ask other participants of the debate. It's going to be a technological panel. It's the main issue that affects us. It's the matter of energy and the matter of energy sources, prices, energy package, climate package. So I would like to ask here to join us the president of Orlen, Adam Gorszanów, vice president of the Polish Mining Group, Tomasz Heryszek, president of Węglokoks and the host of today's event, and Mr. Paweł Śliwa, vice president of the Polish Energy Group.
Panie prezesie,
dear President, now the war in Ukraine has introduced a lot of chaos on the energy resource market. We don't know how it's going to end. We don't know where it's going. We know there might be some very pessimistic scenarios, but there are others. What's your scenario? How do you see these developments on the energy and fuel market? Thank you. Thank you on behalf of Daniel Obajtek, the president of Orlen. He had other duties, so he asked me to replace him. It's an important conference and important questions are asked here. Well, we trivially, sometimes colloquially say that big business has no morality and no ethics, but definitely, surely, managers and business people should have some ethics and morality to follow and some ethical principles. And we know at Orlen and probably at many other state companies and other companies, we know there is no price or no bid for human life. It's priceless. Obviously today energy security of Poland is specifically valuable. We may say that our sovereignty is based on this security, our growth, our future. We
potencjalne zagrożenia i
perceive all
wyzwania.
these potential
Mamy
challenges
świadomość, że
and threats,
powinniśmy
we know and are
odchodzić
aware of the
od
fact that
węglowodorów
we
ze
should
wschodu.
move away
Pan premier o tym
from
wielokrotnie, pan premier Morawiecki
carbohydrates
przecież o tym
from
wielokrotnie
the
podnosi tę
east.
kwestię.
Mr. Morawiecki has
Ale nie
mentioned it
wszyscy
a
przecież
number
mają
of
taki
times,
stosunek do tej kwestii.
but not everybody treats it in
Niemiecka
this
Izba
way.
Handlu
The
i
German
Przemysłu całkowicie protestowała
trade
ten kierunek
and
w ostatnich dniach.
industrial chamber has
Może nie
protested
wszyscy
against
wiedzą,
it.
ale na przykład
Maybe not
Niemcy
all of you are aware of the
kilka
fact,
dni przed
but
wybuchem
Germans,
wojny
a few
sprzedali
days
kolejną swoją
before
rafinerię Rosjanom.
before the
I nie
war,
wzbudzało to
the outbreak
specjalnego
of
protestu
war, they sold their
ze strony
refinery
tych
to
malkontentów,
Russians,
którzy w naszym
and there were
kraju
no
bardzo narzekają i na
protests
wyniki
from
Orlenu,
those who complain
takie
about the
zyski.
results
No,
of Orlen
tak się
and,
ułożyła
and the level of profit and so
historia.
on, but that's
Mimo
how it goes, right?
2 lat
That's how the
pandemii,
story
lockdownów,
goes.
teraz tej
Despite
bezlitosnej
2 years
wojny,
of pandemic and the
że,
lockdowns,
PKN Orlen
and
potrafi
this
3 miesiące osiągnąć
merciless
zysk
war,
netto taki, jak
PK
poprzednicy za poprzednich
Orlen
rządów
has
osiągali w 8 lat.
achieved
To też coś
in
pokazuje.
the
Gdybyśmy
last
byli w
few
innej
months
sytuacji
we achieved the
finansowej,
profit similar to
to
that we
te
had
wyzwania
for 8
ogromnej
years
pomocy
during the
przecież i
previous
zaangażowania na rzecz
authorities,
Ukraińców,
and this
wyglądałyby zupełnie
involvement
inaczej.
in Ukrainian
Oczywiście tym
assistance
procesom
would look differently if it were in
bezpieczeństwa
the case.
energetycznego
Well, obviously,
naszej
energy
ocenie,
security, in our opinion,
sprzyja budowa takiego
supported
multienergetycznego koncernu,
by
czyli nie
a
tylko
multi-energy
koncernu sprzedającego
concern,
paliwa, jak to się
not
niektórzy
only
wydaje.
one that
Chcę
sells
powiedzieć, że dzisiaj
fuels,
ten handel
that's many
detaliczny
things,
paliwami plus
but this
produktami
retail market of fuels,
sprzedawanymi
but
na polskich
also
stacjach, które
products
ponad
that are
80%
being
są
sold at
produktami
Polish gas
polskimi
stations, which
wyłącznie.
are
To jest
more
tylko
than 80% of them are
13%
Polish
wkładu do
products,
naszego
that's only
zysku.
13% of our
Pozostała część
part
wypracowujemy
of
w
benefit,
oparciu
of
o
profit.
inne takie nogi
The rest of our
biznesowe,
profit
czyli
is based on
petrochemia,
other
rafineria, energetyka. Dzisiaj wchodzimy w
sectors
wodór,
of
to,
our
o czym
operation,
pani prezes
that's refinery,
BGK
petrochemicals,
mówiła i tu chciałem bardzo podziękować pani
and
prezes za
hydrogen
dobrą
technologies.
współpracę
So I would really
z
like to
tym
thank
bankiem właśnie.
the
wydaje mi się,
president
że
of
wszystkie te decyzje
BGK,
na rzecz
who was
pomocy Ukrainie, czy
among the
zaangażowania
panelists in
we
the
wsparcie,
previous discussion here for good
wyglądałyby
cooperation. So
zupełnie inaczej,
if it
gdyby
weren't
nie
for that, our
taka
cooperation would
harmonijna
look
współpraca,
differently. If it
spółek
weren't for
Skarbu
this
Państwa, koncernu
flawless
naszego,
cooperation
PKN
of
z
our
administracją
companies
rządową, rozumiemy
of
się.
PKN
Tutaj wiemy,
Orlen
że trzeba
and
dokonywać
state
tych fuzji,
administration. We know we
z
need to
grupą
have
Lotos,
these
PGNiG,
mergers
bo
with
musimy budować taki duży, silny koncern, który
ING
będzie się
or with
mógł
Lotos,
liczyć na
because
arenie
we need
europejskiej.
to build a huge,
Warto może przypomnieć,
big
że
concern
dzisiaj
that will
niektórzy,
be important
próbują przeszkadzać w
internationally.
Polsce w tym
I know that
procesie,
there are
a przecież
some
nie tak
that
dawno
hinder
sami
this
chcieli
process, but not
grupę
long
Lotos,
ago they wanted to sell Lotos
Rosjanom
Group to
i tutaj nie
Russians,
było specjalnych protestów.
and there were no protests
Wydaje
back
się
then.
również, że
It also
my
seems to
musimy
me that
jako
we,
koncern myśleć nie
as
tylko o
a
formie współpracy,
concern, as a
przyszłej
huge
współpracy z
corporation,
Ukrainą
we
w
need to
sensie
think not
energetycznym,
only about
być
future
może
cooperation
współpracy
with
z
Ukraine
systemem
in terms
energetycznym,
of energy,
energii
maybe
atomowej,
with
przecież
the
mają
atomic system,
Ukraińcy tą
atomic energy
elektrownię
grid.
Chmielnickiego.
They
My
have
sami
the Chmielnicki
myślimy
power
bardzo
plant.
intensywnie i podejmujemy
We
działania
also
już,
think
można
very
powiedzieć,
intensely and undertake
inwestycyjne w
actions,
zakresie małej
investment actions
energii
with regards to
jądrowej,
small
budowy
nuclear
tych systemów
power
SMR-ów, MMR-ów.
plant, the
Ale też
construction
proszę
of
popatrzeć, jak
SMR
okazuje się
and
dalekowzroczne
MMR
było
systems. But
posunięcie ze strony
think about
PKN Orlen
how far
i
reaching
wsparcia ze strony
approach it
Ministerstwa
was
Aktywów Państwowych tutaj,
from
że
PKN
udało się
Orlen
nam takim
and the
rzutem trochę na
State
taśmę w
Asset
ramach
Management
wykonania
Ministry
warunków zaradczych, które ustanawia nam Komisja Europejska w
that
zakresie
we managed
połączenia z
to
grupą Lotos,
establish
podpisać porozumienie z
some
największą firmą petrochemiczną świata, z Arabii
agreement
Saudyjskiej,
with the
z
biggest
Saudi Aramco,
petrochemical company
która
from
gwarantuje nam
Saudi Arabia
umowy, daje szansę na
guarantees
zakup
contracts
prawie 20 milionów ton ropy.
for the purchase of almost 20
To się
million
jakaś opatrzność tam
tons
czuwała nad
of
nami, że się to udało
oil.
dopiąć. To nastąpiło dosłownie
So
przecież na
It only
kilkadziesiąt dni przed
happened
wybuchem
several
wojny.
dozen
To jest
days
dzisiaj niezwykle
before
istotne.
the war started, so it's very
To wszystko się odbywa
important.
przecież przy znaczących procesach inwestycyjnych.
It's all supported by huge
To są
investments.
nakłady niespotykane w 30-leciu Polski
This is something unprecedented in the last 30 years.
wydawanych na nowe inwestycje. To wszystko razem
As compared
stanowi o
to
tym, że chcemy zapewnić stabilny dostęp do
in the last
energii, do paliw w
investments. This
Polsce.
is all done to provide stable access to fuels, to energy, and reduce emissions.
Powinniśmy tutaj wszyscy działać na rzecz zmniejszania emisyjności.
Because we all should
przemysłu,
contribute
a
to
jednocześnie,
reduction of emissions of
utrzymać
our
jakieś, bym powiedział, racjonalne ceny
industry,
w tym
but at the
zakresie,
same
żeby polskich
time
konsumentów było
keeping
stać na
good
te
prices so
dobra.
that Polish consumer
Na
can
razie się to
afford
udaje.
it.
Mamy jedne z
So
najniższych
far
paliw,
we've been
cen
managing.
paliw
We have the
w
lowest
Europie
prices
i
of fuel so
obserwujemy,
far,
że
so we've
nawet te
been
kraje,
handling
które
it well.
dysponują
Even those countries that
walutą euro,
have
ci
euro
sąsiedzi nasi najbliżsi chętnie tankują
currency,
w Polsce, bo
they
jednak te
prefer
ceny
to
wyraźnie się
buy
różnią.
fuel
Także
in
widzimy
petrol in
perspektywy, widzimy
Poland
szanse
because the
na
prices
współpracę
are so
Ukrainą. Na
different. So
razie
we see some
ta
perspective
faza
for cooperation
jeszcze
with
jest przed
Ukraine.
nami, trwa
This
wojna.
phase is ahead of us
Wiele
because there's
ofiar,
an
wiele
ongoing
rzeczy
war,
ze
there's a
strony
lot of
narodu
victims,
ukraińskiego,
there's a
ale
lot
też,
of sacrifices from the
polski,
Ukrainian
ogromny
society,
polski wkład.
but there's
Miejmy
also
nadzieję,
this
że
huge
również ten wkład
contribution
zostanie
of Polish
finansowo
people. We
doceniony ze
hope
strony
that
Unii
it is
Europejskiej,
also
Komisji
appreciated in
Europejskiej.
financial terms by the European Commission. Thank you very much.
Ja tu
Thank
mogę
you.
potwierdzić, rzeczywiście ta cena w Polsce
Yes, I can confirm that the price in Poland, based on the countries I visit when I go to Strasbourg from Poland to Czech Republic, Germany, yes, I must admit that your prices are, and the government's activity has to be praised because these prices are really the lowest. Now, President, Polish Energy Group. What can you say? What's your evaluation of the impact of this war on our energy security? We obviously also have President of Tauron here with us, but I would also like to ask you about your opinion on the matter.
Szanowni Państwo, dziękuję za możliwość
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me the opportunity to meet with you. I would like to thank you, MEP, and on behalf of Wojciech Dąbrowski, the president of the company. He wanted to apologize because he could not take part in the panel in person, but he sends his warm regards. Now, will the Ukrainian war affect Polish energy security? It will, definitely, because it affects every message we receive from Ukraine. It affects our psyche. But if we move on to energy security, the previous speaker mentioned energy security in terms of carbohydrates. We, as the biggest energy group, 40% of the energy we produce, 40% of energy produced in Poland is produced by PGE Group. 80% of that is based on hard coal and lignite. And we know that the Donbas region coal mines supplied coal to small heat and power plants. We used it to some degree. But if this coal is not supplied, my colleague here from PGG will have to cover those gaps in supplies for the local government and the heat plants that will require it. So this is a kind of answer. Yes, it is a threat. Today, the European Union's policy that you and the Prime Minister mentioned, that we somehow managed to soften it, I think and hope that the ETS system will be softened, as this is our biggest problem for now. In last year, 2021, Polish Energy Group spent 8.8 billion zlotys on allowances. These are huge amounts that obviously translate into increase of prices of energy. So this light bulb campaign, that's why we have it. It shows us where the energy price comes from. That's one thing. Another thing is that the 8.8 billion zlotys only last year, this is more than 10% of investment assumed by PGE that we want to finance until 2030. So this is a huge amount that had to be spent by the company, and they can only return for the development of investments to a limited degree. So the reform of the ETS system is very important. We therefore count on the support of the Prime Minister and of you, dear MEP. As for the Polish Energy Group and our strategy announced in 2020, we want to be a zero emission company in 2050. 2025. So this program of going to the level of zero emission, it has to be strongly modified. We've been implementing investments together with Orlen offshore, where we have the installation port there. We are trying to allocate the local content here in Poland so that offshore construction is something we can benefit from here in Poland. It's one of the biggest investments energy-wise in Poland. That's the offshore investment. But RES cannot build alone, cannot build our energy security. And we, PGE, in the paragraph 5 of our Articles of Association, are to provide energy security for Poland. So, in parallel of the development of RES, both in the land and offshore, we need to develop the system of energy storage. And that's why I'm looking at the president from the BGK bank, because we see a lot of synergy with what you were talking about. But it's not only hydrogen, but also large-scale energy storage, lithium and iron energy storage. The biggest storage areas are the power plants, the water power plants that save the system, where the units, 10 units in Bełchatów, collapsed. The power plants supported the system, provided this energy security, so it has to be developed together with areas. And another problem we have, which is administrative problem, is the creation of a secret sector, creation of an agency that will have some power units that will supervise in a way the power units, which will release us in a way from coal that is so much hated by the European Union and by the banks globally, but obviously not BGK. But that's the way it is. We can't find financing. It's very difficult to find financing for investments if they are related to a company that produces energy based on hard coal. So we know it's going to be secure. We're changing. And I believe the energy security, we will fulfill paragraph 5.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I know Mr. President is also very busy today. Commissioner for Energy, Catherine Simpson, is present in Katowice. We actually hosted her twice at Silesian Deal Conference, and very important discussions today regarding coal, CO2 emissions, and here I'm addressing President of Polish Mining Group, PGG. Today this coal appears to be very needed because in a way, due to war in Ukraine, but also unreliability of renewable energy sources, coal is coming back to play. Are you, as PGG, Polish Mining Group, are you able to provide this energy security? Taking into account at least the fact that for several years you had been forced to go away from coal as fast as possible. Thank you very much for giving me the floor, and as my predecessors, I wanted to apologize for the president of the company being absent today from here. Other duties kept him away, but thank you, Madam MEP, and everybody. This situation, because we actually were dealing with energy crisis in the second half of the year, it practically changed everything. Well, it's Polish Mining Group in 2021. A plan was being elaborated and was implemented, a rescue plan for Polish Mining Group, PGG, that is the largest provider of coal in Poland. That plan was actually based on subsidies in return for liquidation. 24th of February changed practically everything. Let me tell you the following. If certain activities resulted from this decarbonization EU policy for many years, today, in a matter of months, it is difficult to change it completely, opening up new work fronts and preparatory work. It is costly and very long-term processes. So we are taking up activities in this respect, and we feel the burden on us today as the guarantor of energy security. And my predecessor was saying that almost 70% of energy balance came from hard coal and lignite in Poland. This results in specific pressure on us in this respect. Not always we are able to fulfill these expectations of that pressure, but these activities are being taken up. And also from the perspective of this embargo on Russian coal, I wanted to show you a few slides here to actually show where we are and where Ukraine is, because today we are talking of Ukraine. Can you switch over the slide, please? About the potential for cooperation. No. Yes, it is here. Thank you. And we, in very many aspects, are similar with them. We have similar problems with transformation of electrical power sector, and this is a vast potential for cooperation. We have been for about 20 years. We are about 20 years ahead of Ukraine. And please note here, we are today worried about the outcome of introducing embargo on Russian coal on the importation to Poland. Importation to Poland is 12% demand. In case of Ukraine, it is 40% of their demand, out of which majority being coal. Practically, it used to be Russian coal. Total energy mix in Ukraine is, of course, different. 1/3 there is gas, which also comes from the east, and also nuclear energy. Coal is only 21%, but practically from the moment Donbas was cut off from Ukraine, were out of 140 mines. Actually 80 mines remained on the other side of the border. Ukraine stopped being self-sufficient. Bogdanka, you see 200,000. So this is the next slide, which is very significant for us as Europeans. 65% of importation of coal to Europe, and these are three largest consumers: Germany, Poland, and Ukraine. That is coal for 80 million of imported coal, 65%. that is Russian coal. Next slide, please. This is an interesting information that in spite of war, this electrical power system of Ukraine still holds in place. This economy is in operation. Demand is there. We have a significant drop, but those sources keep working and producing. And next slide, please. Finally, where the electro power sector is today in Ukraine. That means, as I said earlier, Ukraine has become dependent on Russian coal, but what surprised me is that Ukraine is today producing coal at a higher cost than we do. We have been being convinced that this 90 odd US dollars production cost is non-market price. In 2021, it was 150 US dollars in Ukraine. And the system today, of course, with limitation of increase and transferring these costs on power companies. Here it reads 2,000 hryvnias per ton, so practically 50%, 75 US dollars. This was the price for power sector. So subsidies in 2021 was 1 billion zlotys. And of course, President Zelensky, for obvious reasons, announced blocking the increase of prices of energy prices for Europe for the nearest half a year. And this shows that transformation processes in mining and carbon-based, coal-based energy will have to be in place and have to be speeding up. And we have experience in this respect. And this is a vast potential. Business-wise, science-wise, technologically, also in this respect, we as a Polish mining group will also want to get involved in it, and we do count upon the fact that we as an entity, as like other state-owned companies, will have a significant share in reconstruction of Ukraine. Thank you very much, Mr. President. And let me now address President of Węglokoks company. In your resources, you have metallurgical industry included. At one of the former conferences, you were telling us about a difficult situation of Polish metallurgical industry in the context of a situation in relations with China. And today the situation is completely different. So how can this sector be developing? Honorable Madam MEP, dear ladies and gentlemen, a lot has been said about coal already. Węglokoks is also now responsible for possible importation needs of our country. Parallel to this meeting at the 12th floor, a moment ago, there was a meeting with Madam Ambassador of Indonesia, among others. We are building relations directly in those markets, which are markets regarding production of energy generating coals, because deficit mentioned by my predecessor, 8.5 million tons of that coal this year will probably appear this as well. All Russian coal, which is not flowing into Poland now, although this is only one part of elements of energy security provision for Poland and our part of Europe or the world. 70% of generation of electrical energy from coal, for sure, for many years still will be with us. Of course, relatively energy mix will have to be changing over the nearest few years, but one has to still keep in mind that nuclear energy will not be a question of 2, 5, or even 8 years time. It may need 10, 12 nearest years, and onshores, offshores. Here I'm smiling at Mrs. President as representative of Węglokoks Capital Group, within which also metallurgical plants, metallurgical companies are in operation. so they can offer this content. And I would like to just signal a little bit of the next problem our contemporary world has to clash. This is, among others, that kind of raw material deficit of which occurred already a few months ago. And for these couple dozen days of war, this deficit is quite significant. Steel, prices of steel, steel is present practically in all sectors of industry, from defense through infrastructure to construction, roads, bridges, viaducts, but also everyday use objects. We are producing about 8 million tons of steel as a country. This is our production, 8 million tons, but consumption is twice as big. Ukraine used to be producing about 22 million tons of steel. Russia is a market of about 80 million tons of production of steel. Where from was steel coming to Poland in the former years? Well, first of all, from Eastern markets, Ukraine, Russia, Belarus, also China and India to a lesser extent today. But all these chains have been torn apart. What economy is actually dealing with today is not only high price of steel, because supply-demand law worked right away, but it is lack of steel, shortages of steel for further processing, for example, in raw material plants in Czech Republic, in Poland, in Germany. Why and what possible threats are here regarding Ukraine perceived by us? As you know, currently, one of the last places of high tense fights are Azovstal plants managed by Metinvest, managed by Akhmetov. It was, among others, one of the main suppliers for our metallurgical plants, providing us with coils of metal sheet used by companies in this part of the world, but also a lot is being said about Russia's attack on Kryvyi Rih, where ArcelorMittal plant is located, but also the largest iron ore mine providing for our part of Europe. It results in the fact that, among others, our contractors, like US Steel, Koszyce, Trzinieckie Żelazarnie in Czech Republic, and Solo, and also plants in Austria, do not have appropriate sufficient solutions, resources, and metal as well. Why? Because currently war activities are going on there. The whole Zaporozhye is metallurgical background when we talk of market of steel, not mentioning food and other rare earths metal, which are in abundance in Ukraine. But this results, first of all, in disruption, I think I may say, also in security, not energy security, but security to provide raw materials also for our country. And therefore, the war all of a sudden started making us aware of really many things. How dangerous was the policy of pushing out heavy industry to the hands of the Chinese, of the Indians, to Far East as well, where today we are actually doomed to base on deliveries on supplies from those markets. And therefore, among others, our group this year will present a plan for reconstruction to some extent. Of course, not on a volume with which would cover 100% of demand for steel in our country, but we want, due to huge challenges, not only in Poland, but also in this part of the world, huge challenges related to further re-industrialization of our part of the world. We want to put stakes on ecological steel
między innymi z polityki złomowej,
resulting from scrap policy, among others. We want to talk about the need to build steel plants together with rolling mills so that we have our own steel and that we can also trade in it in Poland as well. This is a task we have put forth, and definitely we will be implementing it. Thank you. So here we may say that in this room, all these opinions have established a platform, Silesian Bank of Ideas, ideas for development, both for Ukraine and for Poland, but also for Europe and further on. I think that we will go on, continue in this direction. Thank you, Mrs. Presidents. Thank you very kindly for your input. Please give my regards to your bosses, President Obajtek, President Dąbrowski, and President Rogala. And now, I would now like to avoid doing a big closing by myself. I wanted to invite Mr. Igor Andreev, who has lived in Upper Silesia for years, and he is involved in supporting, assisting his Ukrainian people. He had to escape from Ukraine. He had a company operating very well, prospering home, but he is here in Poland now, and he is strongly involved in helping now his friends and compatriots from Ukraine. Igor, please wrap up this meeting. Honorable Madam MEP, honorable ladies and gentlemen, from the very beginning, I wanted to thank you very kindly for the support given to the nation of Ukraine. This is incredible help, and it was provided without any conditions, without any considerations, just right away, simply when it all started. Perhaps I'll tell you about what you probably have not thought even when you decided to give this help. There are no words which can express how supportive it is for Ukrainian soldiers, being sure that their children, mothers and wives are safe in Poland when they are fighting against the invaders. And your help, your participation in this first battle won against the Russian flood, it is it is impossible to overestimate. Thank you very much. I wrote down statistical data. Everything has been mentioned here. The only thing that I noticed that here, well, they are trying, I mean, Putin's conservatives will be breaking here in Poland, trying to tell you that Ukrainians will be a burden for your budget, for your families, for your state. Of course, there is a problem that women and children came here, and I can see here not everybody have been registered yet, but there will be about 1 million children already, and I'm meeting my compatriots, and they are not planning to stay here and wait. They very gladly would take up jobs, but as of today, those mothers have to be staying with children. Everybody understands it. And therefore, I noticed that Mr. Voivod quite rightly raised the topic that if it is possible, if it happens to be possible to consolidate our Ukrainians, at least 16 people together, so there will be a possibility for somebody staying with the children and others will find jobs right away. Here I noticed that, for example, in Upper Silesian region, there are lots of post-industrial buildings which are not in use now. If a possibility showed up to adapt those post-industrial buildings, to simplest residential conditions, maybe also old students' dormitories. Then we can consolidate up to 100 mothers together, so then 5, 6 women would stay with the children, and the rest could quite easily go to work, and they will go and work, and there will be no problem about it, because simply they do not want to create problems for a nation who opened up their hearts and supports them here now. I would be very grateful if such a possibility would be simply taken into account, and if it was also possible to equip those compartments, if the EU money comes, of course, with some equipment for, say, sewing, tailor activities or cooking, those women would manage. They would, for example, start cooking using Polish products and Ukrainian recipes, and many things could be actually selling and providing them with actually maintenance, and they would be paying taxes, so they would have their input into Polish budget, and they are all ready to take up such work, such jobs. But only possibility, if there was only a possibility to leave children under somebody's care, because they understand no educational system in no country would not be able to take up so many children within 2 months. No, such a possibility does not exist, and it seems that that would be very useful for the situation we are all in now. I would also like to say about if there is such investment in place, I believe that nobody should be worried that many of those people will go away, will leave back. Where will they go? To Mariupol, to Bucha, to Gostomel, to Lysychansk? Those towns are simply torn apart and removed from the surface of the ground. There is no place to return. We know that reconstruction of Ukraine will take 5 to 7 years, not less, and that definitely is not a task for mothers with children. Here they will have, if they have jobs here, they will stay to provide their children with safety, and after 5 years for those children, Poland will be home already. Definitely they will not leave. And what I would like to add, without statistics, a little bit, I would like to tell you about those Ukrainian children here in Upper Silesia in Katowice. At the beginning of the war, my wife decided to take in actually the boy who she is godmother to. Mother of that child could not leave Ukraine, come here. She brought the child here and fulfilled all the formalities so that my wife can take legal care of that child. And a few days later, that mother had to go to Kiev because she had other children there and husband whom she didn't want to leave. It's, of course, men are fighting there. This 10-year-old boy had been practicing Taekwondo for 4 years, and it appeared that here in Silesia, in a few days' time, there was a Taekwondo tournament, and my wife managed to enroll the boy to the list of participants of the contest, and it appeared that the boy went to the tatami without a coach, without supporters, and he got to the finale of the contest without any failures. Of course, he had to be actually made a part of a striker club. Striker actually took the second position. I will not forget the words of the young warrior till the end of my life when I took him from the bus. And the boy said, in Poland at last. He spent 2 weeks in cellars in Kiev under shelling, and all the time he dreamt of going to a country where people like children and will not let him be harmed, where there are no Russians who are shooting at people, raping and robbing. I also have one more story, which I participated in myself. It is a story of a small 2-year-old Ukrainian child from Popasna. At the beginning of war, the wife, sister, and that little 2-year boy, well, it's family, they wanted to leave. They actually approached me. This information happened to reach me. I contacted my partners, and the response was incredible on the side of Polish people. In their office in Zabrze, immediately they found a compartment upstairs. In 2 days, that compartment was prepared, ready for inhabitation, but it happened so that the Russians blocked exit from Popasna, and that family, father of the 2-year-old boy, organized a brigade, and they spent 2 weeks repairing the railway track damaged by the Russians, a railway track towards Kiev. For 2 weeks, every night, they were repairing the rail all nights. After 2 weeks, they succeeded. They also managed to find a maneuvering locomotive from a mine, and they found coal transporting railway carriages. And during evacuations, the Russians actually found them. So men were putting in wives and children into those railway carriages and attracting the attention of the Russians to follow them. They simply took the fire on them. And this way, the 2-year-old got to us within 3 days' time. And I must tell you, when I brought them to Zabrze, it appeared that Poles, not only that everything was prepared there, the fridge was filled up with everything, and on the table there was a pile of juicy fruits. I may say you will not buy such fruit in normal shops. The Ukrainians were very strongly moved. Next emotions awaited us next day. Well, it appeared that this little boy, actually, after that long journey, had 39 degrees centigrade temperature. And, well, I came from Katowice to Zabrze, 25 minutes traveling, you know. After 15 minutes, I think I will keep remembering it till the end of my life. After 15 minutes, I phoned them. I wanted to say, I am nearby. And they tell me, women from the office already found a doctor who understands Russian. They already found a car. They already put them in the car, and they are already going to the doctors. I decided to still go there and help them whatever way I can in this situation. So still 10 minutes, 25 minutes altogether, I come to the office. And there is already a bag full of napkins and clothes for that little boy. And within 5 minutes, still, they found a pram for this little boy. This is what I wanted to tell you about, my dear Poles, that I personally believe that there must be a school book written for those important people in the EU on how to be a Christian. And finally, I wanted to remind you a situation. Well, I'm talking of the Moskva cruiser, which had been bombarding Syrians and then Ukrainians, and about those sailors who did not give in and took the fire from that cruiser on themselves. Ukrainian sailors are already at home with their families, and the cruiser is resting at the bottom of the Black Sea. And I hope that Black Sea sharks called katrons are finishing eating that captain of that cruiser. And for us all, it is a charm. We do not need to be afraid of them. We simply must be fighting till the end. And I am convinced that together with Poland, Ukraine will finally really become free, and children will really be happy in this country. Thank you very much.
Dziękuję.
Thank you.
Panie Igorze.
Thank you, Igor. And
Wszyscy chyba
I think we have all been strongly moved. Thank you very much for participation in this conference.